Good morning, everybody. I need to change this background, but Zach and I here to dive into some Dynasty Q&A and things of that nature. Excited to dive in with Zach. Zach, how are we doing today?
I'm good, man. It is a very warm South Florida morning. It is so hot, man. I mean, it's just like you step outside and the humidity just smacks you in the face. But it's a great day, man. Like I've already been outside for a couple hours training some clients. I'm excited to be here, and you know me, man. I'm a junkie, so I'm a junkie.
Sure. I know it with you and your constant startup drafts. I know that you are very often in the draft sphere and sticking in the streets for us.
Yes.
So Joe Webb says it's so hot you got to cancel your plans, which is hey, I'm still chilling out here. It's not too bad in Wisconsin. Wisconsin's actually pretty nice right now. It's only like 70 degrees right now, so it's pretty nice out here. Thank God. Thank God I
I
live in
mean,
a mild state.
it's not that it's hot because it's hotter in other places. It's just you cannot walk outside in South Florida without the humidity literally hitting you in the face. It is so, it's one of those, it's 90, but feels like 105, which I don't understand how that works. Like if it feels like 105, it's 105. All right. That
Right.
doesn't make any sense. But like, the sweat is in all the crevices, like all the crevices. It's like I had to shower before getting on here, even though nobody's seeing me in person, just to feel decent about myself and my presentation.
Yeah, it sounds like everybody's commenting that it's very hot where they are too. So Tennessee, you can't breathe. Muggy is F in South Georgia. Hey, it's nice and chill here in Wisconsin, so I'm pretty happy about that. But
Yeah.
let's kind of dive in here right now. It's the off season. Before we, let's let some questions roll in here. But it's the off season. What are you kind of doing in your leagues right now? Like, are you kind of just standing firm, chilling, just kind of taking in the camp news? I know that you have been very adamant in the group chats about whenever there's hype on players, you're putting them up on the trade block. So what are you doing in your leagues right now?
Yeah, it's we talked about this in one of our last videos. I think the DeAndre Swift price check video. It's just how difficult it is to make trades right now because of the inflated perceived value of certain players because of stuff like camp news or just whatever potential people think players certainly have. So right now is not really the trading season. It is for me, it's if I want to start a new league, I'll look for a new league and I'll get into that. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later today. And otherwise, it's depending on your league and its roster size, it's evaluating what free agents are available. I picked up yesterday DJ Dallas in a league. Like I know it's not pretty, but DJ Dallas just moved up the depth chart by doing nothing. And we know that Rashad Penny will eventually get hurt, whether it's for a stretch of games or whether it's for a game. Again, it depends on the roster size and it depends on the league. So I'm out there scouring camp news, as you've noticed, and the other thing I do about that is I don't just let Dynasty Rewind crew know about it. Like I let my league group chats know about it too. I'm not trying to be secretive about it. I'm like, hey, look, Romeo Dobbs is having a really nice camp, man. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but Christian Watson ain't out there right now. So, which I know makes you so excited, Bob, because you absolutely loved the fact that the Packers didn't pick a wide receiver in the first round. But it's just, no matter how many leagues you are, it's scouring the waiver wire, who is available, who's not. And I picked up Kyle Rudolph a couple of days ago when the Kyle Rudolph scent was hot. And now I have potentially a starting tight end for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So it's not really trade season. It is very difficult to make trades right now because of people's perceived value of players. I'm not saying you can't make trades. I'm just saying you're going to have to overpay to make those trades because everybody thinks that their players are the best players in the league. And there's nothing wrong with that. You're supposed to think that. So it's not really trade season for me. It's who can I pick up off the waiver wire? Who's doing well in camp, who's getting reps with the first team, who's getting reps with the second team. I think there was a report out of Philadelphia yesterday that Miles Sanders is getting reps with the second team. That's not good for Miles Sanders, So Just keeping myself abreast of all the news, basically, and making sure that I'm aware of potential players that are on my waiver wires in my deeper leagues. I can't hear you, Bob. I don't know if you're muted or what, but I can't hear you. It's just me
I
talking to
definitely
myself now.
muted myself.
There we
So
go. We're all
I'm
good at
back.
this. We're
I'm back. I'm
professionals.
back. We're good. But Ja Webb chiming in, just like you said, picking up the latest hype guy. And the thing is like you don't have to necessarily pick up these guys to flip. You can kind of wait and see. I think it kind of depends on what kind of roster mode you're in. If you're in a rebuild, I could see the avenue where you keep him, and I could also see one where you move him right away and just say, hey, see you later, man. I'll take the second round or third round pick I can get for him, whatever. Because I think you can get something of that nature for Romeo Dobbs right now, especially if you're plucking him off the waiver wire for nothing. Or if you happen to draft him and you draft him for a fourth, flip him for a third or second next year, you're in the plus.
Mm-hmm.
A question we have from Nate: Dynasty Startup Draft. Should I allow trades?
Oh,
I think
oh my
absolutely.
God.
I
Yes.
will say, that I think there is a bit of a caveat to this because if you're all very inexperienced with startup drafts and dynasty in general, I think there's a very big way to ruin your league or your team in your league for the long haul. But I do think trades should be around. If anything, try to find a trade calculator.
Keep trade cut.
Dynasty Dom, keep trade cut. I don't know. They don't do startup picks. I don't
They
think.
do.
Do
They
they?
do now. They do.
Oh, they do. Okay,
Mhm.
cool. So that's a good free resource if you got a few bucks to spend. Dynasty Dominator has a really good trade calculator that I like to use from time to time. Not a lot, but that does do startup picks as well. So if you can ultimately you should, because I think it just adds a whole new element to the startup draft. It's a lot more fun. It's a lot more engaging with your league mates and things like that. So absolutely, I think you should. But
Yeah, I
yeah, I
would
don't.
not. I would not join a league that did not allow trades
Yeah,
in the startup draft. Now, if you're doing an auction draft, I don't think trades are necessary. You don't. And
yeah,
auction drafts need to be faster, so you don't have that
right.
time. 4 hours between picks. But I would not join a league that didn't have trades in the startup draft. And I'm going to talk about that's my topic for today: is startup draft and the philosophy I have in it.
Yep. So Dane chiming in here, one of our boys, one of our very loyal listeners in a rebuild. I'm trying to gauge interest in Camp Hype. League isn't very acting, and I'm hoping to gain some picks for anything. So I think Zach touched on this really well already. I think get, talking Camp Hype or listening to Camp Hype is so tough because there's Pete Carroll is one that fluffs up everybody, but there are cases where hey, if it makes sense, like I think a good example is the Gainwell, like running with the first team. I don't see Gainwell as a RB1 option on a team. Even if he's running with the first team, I don't necessarily think that he's going to flip a switch and he's the guy now. I don't really see that narrative. But when you have cases like Romeo Dobbs, who was fairly hyped coming into the draft cycle, had a not great combine, had a not great Senior Bowl, but gets decent draft capital to a team that needs a wide receiver, he's getting hype in camp. That kind of makes sense to me. And maybe that's me trying to look through rose-colored lenses because it's my team. But it's one of those things where gauging interest is tough. But I absolutely, if you're picking up guys, I'd say especially the guys that like the Kenny Gainwells, if you have him, I'd be looking to move him. A guy that you just put up on the block, Kenyon Drake, was hyped up to be getting a very significant role this year. I think that's a great example of a guy I would probably look to flip, especially in a rebuild. A 28-year-old running back who's, I would say, mostly PPR dependent. Definitely a guy I'd look to flip for whatever you can get, second or third round pick. I'd be pretty happy with. Anything to add here, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing you can do is if your league isn't very active, you can take advantage of that. You can take advantage of people not knowing that Daniel Bellinger is getting first team snaps with the Giants. Wandale Robinson is looking really good. There's a lot of news that you can take advantage of, and if it's a league that's not as deep, these players are available. It is unfortunate when you're in a league that is not very active, or you have a couple of people that just don't check. I really don't like that at all. Call me like a junkie, whatever. Um, I can't do inactive leagues. I can't do people that are not inactive or that are inactive in leagues and not present. So just take advantage of the camp news, stay on top of it, and you'll be all the better for it if your league mates are not present.
Yeah, 100% agreed. I think that's, the most leagues. I do have a couple leagues where there are less active owners, and oddly enough, they're always the teams that are usually bottom of the barrel or middle of the row at best. And it's like, well, I wonder why you're struggling in this dynasty league because you're not trying to pay attention. Dynasty, the whole thing is to be active, as close to active year round as you possibly can. You love football. You want to experience and be in it year round. That's kind of the whole point. So Mike F chiming in, what should I do with Rashad Penny? I assume Rashad Penny, not Elijah Penny. Rashad Penny, James Conner, and Josh Jacobs in a dynasty PPR. Let's start with Penny. What are you doing with Penny right now? Buy, sell, hold? What are you thinking?
Man, those are some tough names right there.
Yeah.
I don't even think I need to single out Penny. All three of them is very team construct dependent. If I'm a contender, these are potential pieces that can, like Rashad Penny did help people win a championship last year. Everybody throws that quote in my face. It's 1,000% true. If I'm in the middle of the pack, I'm trying to trade Rashad Penny to a contender or to the Kenneth Walker owner and say, hey, do you want to control this entire backfield? Because there's value in having an entire backfield. Yep. Conner and Jacobs, Conner is interesting because he had so many touchdowns last year and his rushing average was not good. I think it was less than 4 yards per carry last year. Yep. And so part of me thinks that while Arizona obviously gave him money to be a featured back, they've made a lot of investments at the running back position, not big ones, but other ones. They have spent time, Benjamin this offseason. They went out and got Darrell Williams, and then they drafted Keontae Ingram. So I don't know necessarily. I don't think James Conner is going to be the RB5 or whatever he was last year. Probably still be a top 15 running back because it seemingly he gets those red zone touches. But none of these running backs, to me, maybe Josh Jacobs, are long-term options at the running back position, which this is where your team construct comes in. Are you a rebuilding team? If I'm rebuilding, I want a running back that I can have for the next 5-6 years. And I just don't see any of those names, except for maybe Josh Jacobs, as a running back that I can depend on for more than a year. So if you're a contender, I'd keep them, especially in a PPR league. If I'm a middle of the pack or a rebuild team, I try to trade right now. And if people are not making trades, wait till they have a game. Wait till Rashad Penny goes off for 24 points and people will be, people will be very interested. So very team construct dependent on that answer.
Yep. 100% agreed on all accounts. I think
stop agreeing with me.
I'm sorry, but I'm in the boat where none of these guys scream real buy to me. I think Josh Jacobs, you could have for a little bit of value versus what you're going to get with him. Working behind a bad offensive line, you're hoping he gets, more PPR work this year. But, with Kenyon Drake hype coming out that he's going to be getting a significant workload, that kind of makes me want to temper my expectations there. Our buddy Andrew chiming in. What is up, dude?
What's up, Andrew?
Mills, what's up? What's up, everyone? Happy Saturday. I'm in my brain. I'm mixed up happy and everyone. Next question here. Caleb chiming in. In a rebuild, should I keep Breece Hall? I think I'm 1 to 2 years out, so I'm thinking on holding him. Absolutely. I think the only realm in a rebuild where I want to move Breece Hall is if I'm well out. Like if I'm, and this is looking really long term. I mean, if I'm feeling like I'm 3 years out, my team is probably not good, and you should move Breece Hall to acquire as many firsts, as many other young players, wide receivers as you can, and go from there. But I think being that you're 1 to 2 years out, I don't think he's doing anything for you that is going to keep you in the middle of the pack if you're that far out, you think. So I think holding on to him is fine by me. Andrew chiming in, what is up with these San Francisco running backs? Is Mitchell the guy? Is it going to be TDP? Sermon getting buzz from Shanahan on his hard work. Jeff Wilson's going to be number 2, feeling like a backfield to avoid. Zach, you've been preaching that all offseason, that you're just have no interest in the San Francisco backfield. And I can't really blame you because it is such a cluster. Mike's brought up a good point that if you're going to attack any of them, attack the one that has the most value because he's probably going to see the field. And that's right now Jeff Wilson. I think Trey Sermon is kind of around there too, but I think Jeff Wilson's a little below him. So if they're saying Jeff Wilson's going to be the number 2 and you're getting him at the best value, that's probably the one I want out of the bunch. Mitchell last year was not able to stay horribly healthy for a long stretch of games. He was decent when he was on the field, but it is a case where unless you're getting these guys at tremendous values, I think TDP when we were doing rookie mocks and he was going in back into the third, early fourth round, I think that was pretty good value for him. Now he's creeped into like the back end of the second round. Little rich for my blood. I'd rather target a receiver there. But again, if you're going to target anybody that is not on your team already, I want to probably look at Jeff Wilson because I've seen him on waiver wires in leagues. I've seen him, he's not valued at all right now. And he's allegedly going to be the number 2. So for me, easy grabbing Jeff Wilson. Any thoughts here, Zach?
Yeah, I'm out. Like I have too many leagues to be worrying about the headache of a running back room. So when it comes to a situation, there is value there. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying me personally, do I want to have to deal with, unless you're in a best ball league, waking up on Sunday, looking at my lineup and saying, damn, do I start Elijah Penny today? He missed 2 days of practice this week. He left the game in the first quarter. Like, I don't want that headache. Kyle Shanahan has found a way to make any running back relevant, and the San Francisco beat writers don't know what they're watching in practice, or Kyle Shanahan is that good at deception. So I don't want any part of that headache. Same thing in New England. I know one of them is going to be very valuable, but I don't want to have the headache of trying to figure that out and being wrong. I'm not the big risk taker in leagues. I will make moves if I feel like they'll help my team as a contender. I'm not a risk taker. I'm probably in like 15 leagues. I have 0 shares of Ramondre Stevenson or Damian Harris unless I inherited it from an orphan. I have 0 shares. Same thing with the San Francisco backfield. I think I have 1 share of Elijah Mitchell, and I inherited it as an orphan team. No interest in headache backfields or headache situations whatsoever. I want to wake up Sunday. I want to feel confident about my lineup, submit the lineup in, and feel good about it. I don't know, man, is Damian Harris going to get carries, or is it going to be Ramondre, or is it going to be the 4 running backs they drafted in the 6th round? Like, I don't want that headache, and I don't know why you would either.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Let's get one more in before we get to our first little mini segment here. What should we be doing with Deshaun Watson? And he might be the only player that can double his value overnight. And I agree. I think it's all about if you're a rebuilding team, and this is obviously putting aside all of the, how he is as a human. We're just talking fantasy here. If you're in the market to acquire a guy, I think it comes down to the value you're getting him at, because obviously, yes, he is a player that his value could double overnight. And if you have him, I think you should hold him because you're just not getting appropriate value. There is buzz saying that he could be the ruling could come down later this or early next week, which we've been hearing, last week and the week before, that it could be next week, that it could be next week, that it could be next week. I'm sure we'll hear sometime in the future. Don't know when that won't be, but I think it's a case where if you're a rebuilding team and you could acquire him for a reasonable cost, have that, because even if he's suspended, it almost helps you because he's not putting up points for your team, and he's kind of making your team worse for a little bit, but you're getting a high-end asset, we think, on the back end. But I'm not dying to go out and acquire him because I don't think you're going to find a good price. What are your thoughts here, Zach?
Well, first of all, Deshaun Watson is always interesting to me because if you don't know about me, I'm in massage therapy school right now. So do I want any shares of Deshaun Watson? No. I don't care if he's guilty or innocent. He's guilty in my eyes of something.
Sure.
He did something. All right. We're not going to get into this whole conversation. I'm not acquiring Deshaun Watson, but that's a personal thing for me. And that's because I'm in school and I'm studying this field now, and I have respect for the whole situation. That's why I don't know if I have the best opinion on this. I will say I did recently trade Deshaun Watson, and I'll tell you the return I got.
Sure.
I traded in a Superflex tight end premium league. I traded Deshaun Watson in a 23 second and third for Juju Smith-Schuster, Dalton Schultz, Mac Jones, Khalil Herbert, Jordan Palmer, and a 23 first.
Yeah, I'll take it. I don't care for George Palmer, but that's fine.
And he will probably still be a very good quarterback.
Yeah,
I just have a personal line that I've drawn because of the life choices I've made, and that's a totally me decision.
yeah,
So he's
yeah,
probably going to be a totally fine fantasy player in 2
yeah,
years when we're looking at this in hindsight. But do I want the player on my team? No, and that is a personal thing for me.
yeah. And I think that's fine. Everybody is free to make that choice on their own. Let's get into our first bit of a segment. I got dynasty mistakes to avoid, things that can really cripple your dynasty run. And I think this is something I've seen through doing audits, through doing, experiencing trades that people make in leagues that I just don't, I can't fathom what they're doing. I think it's just a matter of not understanding the magnitude of the assets you possess. So the first one I got, moving multiple assets for one in return. And obviously this can be viable. You can do this. You can go 2 for 1, even 3 for 1. If you're getting a prime asset and you kind of have assets to burn, but you should not be making these types of moves when you have limited assets, limited draft picks. You shouldn't be making these moves because oftentimes it'll just end up crippling your team where you're just getting one asset in return while it might be a really good asset like a Jamar Chase, like a Justin Jefferson. If you're moving 3 firsts or that kind of quality of players, but you don't have a huge pool of assets to move, which is I think something you're going to touch on later. It just doesn't make sense to me to move so many assets for one in return. I really just think that's a great way to debilitate your asset pool, picks, players, what you have to move for other pieces later down the road. And what it does too is, I know you can't always play in this hyperbole, but if that one player gets hurt, you're that much less able to, pick up the pieces later if you don't have those assets to burn already. So that'd be the first thing I try to avoid. Don't necessarily not move multiple assets, but kind of do it wisely. And like I said, if you're moving 3 firsts worth of assets for one of those big names, while I love those names, it might not be super worth it for your team. Especially if you're not really, it's not a move that's going to put you over the hump. If you're in the middle of the pack, it's not really that type of move unless you're in a really low starting roster where you're only starting 7 or 8 players a week. So again, be calculated with how you do it. Make sure you have adequate assets already to kind of burn is kind of the big thing for me there. Another big thing, overpaying for hyped up names and name value. This is a case where I think, we discussed this in our DeAndre Swift video that came out yesterday, where you're paying up for a projected production of a player, where I think, okay, there is a game to that where you can go buy DeAndre Swift. Another name that was thrown out that's similar to DeAndre Swift is CD Lamb, a player everybody loves, but, has not met expectations yet for what we want him to be. For somebody who's being
Yeah.
drafted as a top 5 wide receiver in Dynasty, he's not lived up to that yet. I will say with that caveat, he has every avenue to do so this year lined up for him where he's not, he doesn't have Amari Cooper there. It's the CD Lamb show, period. So he should, but just because you shouldn't pay the price of a player that has not broken out for what their broken out price is, basically. So you shouldn't be sending, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase level prices for CD Lamb. And I don't think many people are paying that much, but they're paying more than they probably should for assets like that. And a prime example for me, and not necessarily just talking big names, talking names like last year's hyped up player was Antonio Gibson. I went out, made the mistake of spending a lot of capital to go and get him. The year before that,
Oof.
Miles Sanders was the guy who was being hyped up as this awesome dynasty player. He was going to be great. Spent a lot of assets to go get him. It's one of those things where you got to kind of pick your spots and not pay that premium for what the hype is telling you to pay. You need to pick your spots and kind of not just, well, there's hype around him. It sounds like a good reason to buy. No, that's not the kind of case to play. The best way to do it is to, kind of forecast ahead, try to get in before the hype does and get that player at proper value. But you should never pay up that projected production price to get a player. And that kind of, touches on my next point as well, overpaying for projected production. you shouldn't, you can't, like I said, pay that price of what they're supposed to do or what you want them to do, because then if it doesn't happen, you're again diluting your assets, and that's just not the way to be. Especially when that asset doesn't pay off, you kind of dig yourself a bit of a hole if that's how it turns out. The last thing I got, not building up your draft capital pool. This is something I've seen with a ton of audits, is just that, and not having a ton of draft capital to work with. And this is something that's kind of, I've felt is a kind of a cheat code with my leagues, because draft capital never goes down in value, pretty much always goes up. You can say what you want about this 2022 class and that how it was so terrible, but the thing is, everybody was still wanting to trade in to get in and get picks, because rookies are fun. They're exciting. It's one of the best parts of the year for a lot of people. A lot of people feel like the rookie draft is the best part of the year. And if you don't have picks, you want to trade in to get picks. So, and then they can be used in trades. They can be used to obviously draft players and build up your team. The draft picks are just so versatile that there's no reason not to go and acquire as much as you can. Every single trade I do, I'm trying to get some piece of draft capital back, even if it's a third or a fourth. It doesn't have to be a premier pick. It doesn't have to be a first or second to make it worthwhile going to get. I would even say that some thirds and fourths are better, because it can kind of help bridge the gap between a player you have and a player you want that might be better for your team than the player you're sending. Or you might be trying to, maybe you're not as high on the player you have, but you do like a player that somebody else has. They need a little more to push it over the edge. You can send that bonus third round pick you picked up before. You can kind of use those as bridge pieces, and you can still draft people with them. People love their third and fourth round sleepers. Mike loves his fifth round sleepers, that end up being cuts years down the road anyway, after collecting dust on his taxi squad for 2 years. But that's all I'll bash Mike for today. Zach, did you have any dynasty mistakes you wanted to add into this, or did you want to touch on any of those points? You are muted, by the way. Zach, you're muted.
Sorry, I got the dogs in the background. I want to make sure they don't yell.
No worries.
I think that you bring up a lot of good points. I really like you're not building up your draft capital pool, which I'll talk about also in just a few minutes here. But it's also just take a few minutes sometimes and just look at your roster and have some self-reflection. Like, I love the audits that we do, right? But sometimes, Bob, you and I both look at a sheet and it's like, this is so obviously a rebuild. This is so obviously a rebuild. And knowing the right approach to that, like, any league I approach, and there's probably people in the comments that can vouch to this, any league that I'm in where I'm saying I'm rebuilding, first of all, it's not a secret. Like, I'm very public about what I'm not the secretive dynasty guy. All right. If I'm rebuilding, I'm rebuilding. And if I'm going for it, you know both. The league knows. So if I'm rebuilding, I'm also trying to field a somewhat competitive team on Sunday, because my league deserves that. My league doesn't deserve for me to be starting last year Marlon Mack, right? That's not fair to who needs me to beat my opponent. It's not fair to the league. But at the same time, I'm not going to go out there and make a move for Jonathan Taylor. And I did this last year. And it was a huge mistake. And luckily, I was able to overcome it. I needed a running back for 1 week. And again, I want to state my philosophy is I am rebuilding, but I am not laying down for you on Sunday. I'm not. Like, you're going to have to beat me.
I love that.
And again, I'm sure there's people in the comments that can attest to this. I went out on a Sunday and I made a terrible decision. I needed a running back and I traded for Melvin Gordon. I traded Michael Pittman for Melvin Gordon. And I think I also got a second round pick, but still, it was such a huge mistake. It was a huge mistake. And for me, it's having that self-awareness to say, because I think there is something to be said about your character if you're at least trying to put up a competitive fight on Sunday, because somebody else in the league may need me to beat my opponent. And the last thing I want them to say is, "Oh, damn, they're playing Zack." Like, that's the last thing I want in any league. Is I'm a big trash talker. I'm going 14-0 in every single league I'm in, even if I'm rebuilding, because that's the way that's just the way I work. I'm competitive like that. So, I am all about a productive struggle, a rebuild, whatever it is. And the reason why I have so many leagues is I'm trying so many different things, which I'll talk about again. But don't make that mistake. If you're trying to rebuild, commit to the rebuild. And I was able to get Michael Pittman back. Okay, he might be in this chat. His name's Donnie, a really good friend of mine. I had the 101 in that. There he is. I knew he'd be in here, man. Really good guy. I ended up trading him the 101 for the 106 and Michael Pittman. So I got Michael Pittman back. Okay. Michael Pittman's my guy.
Terrible.
No, and then I traded the 106. I moved back to the 108. I got a second round pick in 23, and I drafted Olave. So for the 101, I got Olave, Pittman, and a 23 second. I'm not mad about that. Okay, I'm not mad about that. So don't make that mistake. That to me is like, if you are rebuilding, commit to the rebuild. Don't make that mistake of, obviously it's honorable trying to be competitive, but at the same time, like, sometimes you just got to bite the bullet, you
gotta know when to roll over.
Yeah. And I think it was like a last minute injury that happened. I can't remember what it is. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is, if you're in a rebuild, you need to have assets ready to trade for injured players that are not going to play in 2022. I did this last year with J.K. Dobbins. I traded a first round pick last year for J.K. Dobbins in a lot of my leagues, because typically what I saw was J.K. Dobbins was on a lot of more competitive rosters. And obviously it also depends on your IR size. If your IR size is 6-7, then it might not work so much, because they can just stash him. If you have an IR size of 2, that one player is taking up that spot the whole year. So there is value in that owner shedding that spot and getting a first round pick. So keep an eye. Like right now, John Mechie is going to fall in startup drafts, or you can offer, a third round pick next year, or offer something that may be of value to that owner. And you have a piece to help you rebuild next year that you don't have to go and acquire in the offseason or during the season, and that you may be able to get a cheaper value. John Mechie may never step on the field again, and that's baked into whatever price you're going to pay. And it's why you would pay less than what he would have gone for 2 weeks ago. So keep an eye out for, if you're a rebuilding team, players that get injured and players that get significant injuries that will not play this year in the preseason, because there is value to be had in you taking on the ownership of, I'll take this year on my IR, and you will get a first round pick back. There's tremendous value in that. Now, don't go and trade that player after the year. Like, people are trying to get J.K. Dobbins from me. Like, no. I bit the bullet for a year, and he's staying on my team. Like, no matter what, everybody, J.K. Dobbins. Like, I'm not worried about it. So, that to me is a pretty interesting idea. Is just, if you're rebuilding, look out for those injured players and see if you can, take an injured player off someone's hands, help them out, but help yourself out at the same time.
Yeah, I really like what you said about the reflection, the self-reflection of the team, and kind of looking at it from a large lens. And I'll always say this, and this is, I think, part of why I tend to always lean towards the rebuild. It's always easier to rebuild than to try to turn a middle-of-the-road team to a competitor, because it's hard to move pieces while you're in the middle of the row. You have to sink assets to get better, but the problem is you're going to end up so thin that you just don't. So it's better to shed pieces, get out of the middle, work your way back to work your way forward. And I love that. And there's no shame in that. There's nothing wrong with having a rebuild team. A lot of us pick up orphans. They're orphans usually for a reason. They're not usually good teams. They tend to be on the batter end. So let's get back to some questions here. Your buddy Don chiming in. James Cook, Isaiah Spiller, or Zeus, Zamir White. Keep, trade, cut. Zach, I'm going to kick this to you first. What do you think?
Wow. That is tough, man. That is tough. I think this might surprise people. I think I'm going to keep Spiller. Okay. I'm going to trade James Cook, and I'm going to cut Zeus. Zeus is just the Kenyon Drake news has me a little bit worried about Zeus. Maybe not so much for 2023, but in terms of 2022, what is his value if he's part of a 3-man back? Like, we are talking about the potential resurrection of the New England Patriots backfield in Las Vegas. I really like Zamir White. Who doesn't? He was a number one prospect coming out of high school at the position a few years ago. But Isaiah Spiller, I just see so much opportunity there. Austin Eckler, like I know he had a good year last year, but Austin Eckler's always injured, always. Last year was the exception. Maybe it happens again, but isn't Eckler like 27 years old?
26 or 27. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
he
he's
just
not
turned
26.
27.
He's not 26. He's definitely at least 27. So Isaiah Spiller that may be a 2-year thing where he's really waiting to pay off, but he's going to get goal line touches. They're saying right now that he's a big part of the pass catching game as well. So for me, I'm keeping Spiller, I'm trading Cook, and I'm cutting Zamir White.
Yeah, I think you can kind of flip Zamir White and Spiller. I think I'm going to lean with you, though. I'm definitely trading Cook because where I've seen him go in rookie drafts, seen him at the 103, the 106, several times, the 107. I mean, with what you can get for Cook, I think is pretty solid value to what I think he's actually going to end up producing. And there is a world. I'm not going to be, arrogant or ignorant and say that there's no way he could be awesome, because there is. There's always a chance. There's always a chance. But I'm willing to sell out on the hype trade value that I can get for him now. So moving on to the next one here. If you are selling Jerry Jeudy, what are you looking for? I'll take this one if you don't mind. Mike and I actually did a video discussing Jerry Jeudy versus Courtland Sutton. That'll be coming out sometime next week. Spoiler alert for y'all. But one of the trades that we happened upon on DLF's trade database, there we go, words, is Jerry Jeudy was sold for a 23 late first, the 202 this year. And I want to say, I think that was it. I think it was just a late 23 first and the 202 this year. And I'm like, I'm taking the pick package all day, every day, because one of those pieces is going to equate to Jerry Jeudy. And then you have another piece on top. Period. Done. End of story. I don't know if that's super awesome value, but I think something in that realm of, late first next year, early second in this draft, if your draft hasn't happened yet, somebody in that wide receiver 2 range. I'd love to get like a Chris Olave for Jerry Jeudy. I think you could try to make some move like that. I'm just obsessed with trying to trade for Chris Olave these days. But take notes, league mates that have Chris Olave and when I don't. But what are your thoughts here, Zach? What do you think? What are you trying to get if you're selling Jerry Jeudy? If you are selling Jerry Jeudy?
Yeah, Jerry Jeudy's one of those players right now that is not untradeable. When we do the audits, if Judy's on the list, he's not a core piece. And if anything, he's a trade piece. I'm not saying you have to trade him. He's just it's a potential piece that you can use in a trade. But it's just so much unknown, right? With what's going to happen in Denver. And I feel like Denver is going to be the situation where we look back after the season and be like, how did we not see that coming? How did we not see Courtland Sutton being the best wide receiver? And I know some people are saying that. Whatever happens in Denver, somebody's going to say they're right. That's the thing. It's
absolutely,
because there are so many. Oh, I knew Tim Patrick was going to be the best wide receiver. Everybody's going to know what was going to happen in Denver. But I have no idea. I really don't know if Jerry Jeudy's going to come out looking good. I don't know if Courtland Sutton's going to be the one that looks good. Is Albert going to be the better tight end than Greg Dulcich? I have no clue what's going to happen in Denver. So and again, this goes back into me not being the biggest risk taker. If I can get some value for Jerry Jeudy in a trade, something like you were saying, I'd probably take that. But once again, every question in terms of a player's value depends on my team construct. And if I'm making my team worse, but I'm a title contender, I'm not necessarily doing that. Jerry Jeudy may be able to fetch you a first and a second, but if Jerry Jeudy takes away from the ability for me to compete in a championship right now, at least mentally, because maybe he won't, maybe he pulls a hamstring in the first preseason game, then I'm not moving Jerry Jeudy because I'm not. I am always trying to win unless I have classified this team as a rebuild. That's my philosophy.
Sure. Moving on to the next one. How long do you see Saquon, if he gets back to being elite, which he will, staying meaningful in the league?
That's all you, man.
I think it's a 2-year deal of if we're already seeing camp, blah blah blah, camp, but that he's looking really good in camp for whatever that's worth to anybody, peace of mind, if anything. But I think you're looking at a guy who probably has 2 years left of being really good, and then he could be a guy that's decent later on in his career. I think he has the build for it. If he can stay even moderately healthy, I think he's a guy that could be good for a little while longer. I don't think he has that top 5 running back upside for much more than this year and next, though. I think after that, you're kind of looking for a Zeke Elliott kind of decline, I think, with Saquon at some point. But I don't think he's just going to fall off the face of the earth. I think so. I think there's that to look into. Looking at it, I believe he's a free agent next year for whatever that's worth. So who knows if he resigns or goes somewhere where they'll actually want to use him. That'll be a big note too. But I think he's somebody that I think is good enough that he's going to be able to nail down a contract compared to some of these other running backs that are out there that aren't going to be worth nearly as much. So moving on to the next one, Patty Mills chiming in again. Also thoughts on Chris Godwin versus Elijah Moore. I'm taking Chris Godwin, and I don't think it's particularly close for me.
Yeah.
What are you thinking, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, Chris Godwin. Everybody's so excited about the Jets, and maybe it's just a Dolphin fan in me, but I'm not. I've seen that franchise not be able to get out of its own way for the past 2 decades, as well with the Dolphins. So I just I don't know how much I trust the Jets. I know Elijah Moore had some great games last year. He also had some injury concerns. I know Godwin tore the ACL, but 1 year snapshot, Godwin plays with the best quarterback we've ever seen in our lifetime in an offense that has been loading up the last few weeks. So I'll take Godwin very easily over Elijah Moore.
Yeah, I think I think what's happening with the Jets offense in particular is we're seeing all these weapons brought in. They have Garrett Wilson now. They have Elijah Moore. They have Zach Wilson, who's supposed to be. Some people think he's so awesome. He was really hyped up last year, coming in, didn't do much his rookie year, got kind of better at the end of the season. And then we also bring in Breece Hall. So we're bringing in weapons to this team. It's supposed to be a better offense under Michael LaFleur, I believe, is their coordinator. But the thing is every offense is capped at some point on what output they can do, on what fantasy output they can produce. And the Jets, I just don't see, unless they're a top 6 offense in the league. Do you see that as a viable option, Zach? A top six offense for the Jets? No,
Come on,
I didn't
man.
think
I'm
so.
a Dolphins fan, man. Don't
I
ask me
know,
that question.
I know. You can be unbiased for a minute, but
it's hard enough that the Bills are that, man.
But I just don't see, Elijah Moore being anything more than a wide receiver 2. So if you're paying anything more than that to get him, and Godwin, we've seen him be a wide receiver 1, multiple times. So
how about this? How about this? Do you see the Jets being a top 6 offense in the conference?
No, I don't.
Exactly. You got the whole AFC West, which is better than the Jets offense. Then you've got the Bengals, the Bills. I mean, no, just probably not even top 6.
So Fournette and Etienne are my 2 running backs. Then it's Melvin Gordon and mostly backups. What's a sneaky, reliable RB2 I should target? Andrew chimes in here. I think I know what you're going to say, but go ahead. What is your thoughts on this? I got to pick.
Oh, what do you think I'm going to say? What do you think I'm going to say?
I think you're going to say AJ Dillon.
No, because I don't think that
he's not sneaky enough. He's not sneaky enough.
He's sneaky. He's just expensive. When I'm looking at this question, I'm looking at a cheap, reliable RB2 I should target. My first one that is not. I'm not going to say reliable, but I'm going to put Marlon Mack in there. And then the one that I think is reliable is Chase Edmonds.
Yep, I like him too.
Yeah, when I answer these questions, Bob, I never go with the expensive options because we talked about this at the beginning of the video. Right now, everybody is charging you in a trade what they perceive the player is going to be. And you know me, I'm all on the AJ Dillon hype train for 2023. I even think he's going to be a big part of the offense this year. So what's that going to cost? That's going to cost a lot. Marlon Mack, what does he cost?
Third.
Not very much. Now Chase Edmonds, I think people are starting to pick up on Chase Edmonds a little bit.
I don't.
I think they are because I've tried to acquire in a couple of leagues. Maybe part of it's us hyping him up a little bit, but I still think you can get Chase Edmonds at, when we look back at a trade in hindsight, will be a good value for you.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't hate those picks at all. I especially like Chase Edmonds because I do think he's still somewhat of a value for what I think you're going to get out of him. But let's move on here. Long-term outlook for Spiller as a fourth-round pick. Shades of Mike
my brother.
I had a feeling the last name seemed familiar to me. But long-term outlook for Spiller as a fourth-round pick, shades of Michael Carter, or full-time starter soon. What do you think here, Zach? I don't see full-time starter anytime terribly
So
soon,
tough.
if ever. But definitely a guy who's a good cuff, and I think he's going to get some work. Hasn't had a lot of. Also you should be taking note of guys that aren't getting camp hype, and Isaiah Spiller, pretty quiet. I think the best thing to come out of him was he's active in meetings. I think was the only thing that was said about him, which could be one or good or bad. So what are your thoughts here, Zach?
This is a tough one because any running back now, and this is based off the last 2 years, and I'll get into that in just a second. Any running back now drafted after the 4th round, you cannot trust. And it's not the running back, it's the NFL. The NFL has gone to the running back by committee approach. And when teams have drafted a running back in the 4th round or later, or an undrafted running back, and they have success, it doesn't matter. Every single year for the last 3 years, we've seen a successful running back drafted in the 4th round or later, or be undrafted, have a phenomenal season, and then get replaced. James Robinson got replaced by a 1st-round pick. Yeah. Michael Carter got replaced by Breece Hall. So it's just a situation where I want to be excited about Dameon Pierce. I want to be excited about Tyler Algier. I want to be excited about Isaiah Spiller because he's in such a good offense with a young top 5 quarterback. Tethered to a running back that's 27 years old and has stayed healthy for 1 year. But next year, the Chargers could go and draft like Bijan Robinson. You would never see it coming. You have no idea what teams are going to do in the NFL draft at running back. And that's the frustrating part, is because teams are now trying to have 2 to 4 reliable guys. You could pick up somebody who you perceive as a tremendous value, which I like Spiller. I think he's going to get pass catching work. They're going to try. I think they might try to. You just brought up Ezekiel Elliott and how the Cowboys have kind of prolonged his career, so to say, by not giving him as much work. And last year, Austin Eckler still only had 260, 270 touches altogether. Yeah. I mean, that's a great way to make sure a running back stays healthy. And I can see a part of that. Like the Chargers tried so hard to find another running back last year, and nobody worked. So there is opportunity for Spiller. If there's an injury, there's even more opportunity for him. I can't remember what the contract situation for Eckler is off the top of my head, but it's just so unpredictable with these teams and running backs because, again, as we've seen the last 3-4 years, these guys have successful rookie seasons and they get replaced. There's no reason for the Jaguars to draft Travis Etienne, and they still did it. And I don't want to say there was no reason for the Jets to draft Michael Carter, but the Jets have a lot of needs. And last year, Michael Carter was pretty good. And they still chose to use a top 40 pick to pick another running back. So I like Spiller, but you just never know. Like, it's hard to give a certified answer on this one because teams are just like, nah, I'll take another running back. It's fine.
Right. Question from our buddy Gator, one of our most reliable and friendly patrons we have and most devoted fan. Appreciate you, bud. But Zach, he wants to know what other backfields you're not touching, if any. What are you thinking here?
I'm trying to think of. I've listed the 2 that for sure I'm not, which is New England and San Francisco. Las Vegas is getting close. Yeah. Las Vegas is getting close to me, and I love Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs won me a championship his rookie year. I drafted him in like the 4th or 5th round of a redraft league, which was dumb, and that won me the league. But they're getting that Patriots approach, where like Kenyon Drake is getting love in training camp right now. And I don't know, first of all, I love Kenyon Drake. I'm a Dolphins fan. I was all on the Kenyon Drake hype train a couple years ago.
I'm sure you were.
Don't get we can go down this rabbit hole if you want.
We don't need to.
Right. So I'm gonna say that, and if you would have asked me this question a few weeks ago, I would have put the Dolphins on this list. But sure. I've kind of revisited how I feel that they're going to use Chase Edmonds. But yeah, for right now, it's definitely San Francisco. It's definitely New England. And I would say on the horizon is Las Vegas. It's getting dicey there. And the thing is, I love all 3 of those guys. I think they're phenomenal players and have great abilities in their certain strengths. But Josh McDaniels is bringing that Patriots running back room over to Las Vegas. And I don't know if I like it.
Yeah. I tend to agree with you there. Not many I'm not touching because I mean at some point you have to bite the bullet and deal with a backfield that you don't necessarily like at value.
No,
But
you don't. No, you
yeah,
don't.
I think you do. But moving on here real quick, we'll do this one and then we'll get to your segment. Should I trade Najee straight up for a top 23 first round pick to lock Bijan Robinson up? The team has Pickett and Tannehill in a 2 quarterback league, so we'll definitely finish towards the bottom. I already have 2023 first that will be top 5. I think that's dangerous to think like
Yeah,
that. But
that's a
I mean, if you
perfect word.
know your league, whatever. But I think projecting picks like that
Mm-hmm.
a little dangerous, but I don't hate it. I mean, if your team's kind of needs a running back and doesn't need one right now, like if you're in that rebuilding phase, I don't hate moving Najee, but I think you could push for more than
Bingo.
just the one first, even if it's a 23 first, an early one that you think. Because I mean, the thing is, if you're trading Najee to that team's going to be that much better. So I think that inflates their team a little bit. But it's a move I don't hate, but you should get a little more, even if it's just a second round pick on top. If it's a player back, I'd love to get a player back, like a decent prospect back as well. But I don't hate it. I don't hate the concept because, like I said, Najee, if you're 2 years out, Najee's 26 by the time you're really competitive. So he's not doing a whole heck of a lot for you. So move him now before he takes any value hit from what people are thinking he might, lose some work, might be a little more inefficient because he wasn't super efficient. He just kind of thrived on volume last year. And they didn't do anything to address that offensive line. They addressed everything else in the offseason, but not that offensive line. What are your thoughts here, Zach? Are you in that same boat?
Yeah, you cannot project where teams you can kind of generalize, but to say top 3 is dangerous,
Yeah.
and you're putting yourself at a situation where what if that's the 107? That trade's not worth it anymore. I
Right.
tend to agree with you, Bob. I would need 2 to 3 assets back in that trade. I'm not going to say like, oh, I need 2 first round picks, but I need a first round pick plus. But to project that's a top 3 pick. That is a dangerous game. I know a lot of teams, and you can say, look, this is going to be a top half of the first round pick.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's a playoff team or not a playoff team. But to say it's a top 3 pick, you just don't
Yeah.
know how things are going to go. Like last year, I think I got the number 1 pick in one of my leagues, Dynasty Till Death, that Don is in, because James Conner went insane at the end of the year, and the team that was below me went, 4th or 5th round pick, 4th or 5th overall pick, because James Conner went nuts. So you cannot predict how these things are going to go, and that's a dangerous game because you're going to be expecting the 103, and it could be the 106, 107. So get a first round pick, get another asset, get a young player. Can you get a Wan'Dale Robinson in there, or whatever player you might like that's a young player that you couldn't get in the draft, maybe a Romeo Dubs, something like that. So yeah, I do not love projecting specifically where picks are going to be. Like you said, dangerous. That's very, very dangerous.
A good way to rectify this issue is by adding that other piece, make it so, you're expecting 103 type value next year. But say it's 106. What do you need on top of that 106 to make it valued similar to the 103?
Mm-hmm.
What pick, what player, what do you need to make it? Because that just provides insurance. And then if it is still a top 3 pick, you're really in the money. But if it's not, you're getting proper value still for Najee.
Yeah,
I think
the
that's a really
way
good way to look at
when
it.
I have a dialogue with a teammate, which by the way, if you're trying to make a trade, have a dialogue with people. Don't just send offers. Like have a dialogue. Okay, it'll help you out. The way I'm having that dialogue is, listen, I think somebody might have approached him with that and said, listen, my pick's going to suck next year. Let's do this trade. I cannot base this trade on you sucking. Like, I can't do that. I'm going to project that this is going to be a mid-round pick. I'm not saying that, your team's going to be good enough to compete for a championship with the spot, but I'm also not going to say I'm going to give you Najee Harris and now you're still going to be a top 3 or a bottom 3 team. I'm going to say that you're going to be a middle of the pack team. And so for that reason, I have to add more value to this trade. And I don't think if you present it that way, unless the person's naive, anybody would object to that. Is all I'm saying.
Yep, 100%. So, Zach, kicking it to you here, buddy. Let's talk some startup draft philosophy, something we both love and enjoy. Have a lot of startup draft strategy here. But, Zach, what do you got for us today? Walk us through.
Well, a couple things, and one thing I didn't put on the sheet, so don't be mad at me for it. But I thought about it this morning. So,
That's fine.
so I'm in a lot of leagues. Sue me. The reason I justify it now is Dynasty Rewind. They want me to do this. They want me to have all this information. So I've done a lot of startup drafts lately, auction leagues, snake drafts, anything you can think of. First of all, there's a couple of different philosophies that I like to employ. And the first thing you got to do is go into the draft with a game plan. You cannot go into the draft and just be like, oh, whatever. You're like, oh, I got 109. Great. Have a plan. Do you want to compete? Do you want to try to compete? Or do you want to productive struggle the first year? Right? A couple of ways to do this. I hate the guy that never trades in a startup draft. Like we got the question earlier, should I allow trading him? Yes, please. It makes it so much more fun. Startup drafts I love doing them. And because I try to target like 50 players and I always get so disappointed when I only get 10 of them. But there is the philosophy of just stick to your spot, draft who falls to you. That's not what I do. I'm targeting people specifically. And I have a lot of them in a lot of my leagues. But at the same time, if you're in a lot of leagues like me, don't have all the same players because you could be bad in all the leagues. Like that's a bad idea, right? Yeah. So there's the philosophy of stick to your draft spot, which I think is incredibly boring and makes you somebody I don't want to interact with because you're showing how boring you are. The second is targeting specific players, right? Have a game plan going into the draft. For example, AJ Dillon, Michael Pittman. I think these are all players that you can get at right now ADPs that when we are doing startup drafts next year are going to be much higher than where they are now. Just for example, now this is what I like to call the inchworm effect, and this is my startup draft philosophy. Bob, you know this very well. And I'm also going to present the league in which I'm in a startup draft now, present you the team I have and the picks I've acquired in the future. So, and Bob can attest to this. I think there's a couple here in the chat in our patron versus rewinders league where I did this exact thing. And I'm in the driver's seat for a championship in this league now. I'm one of the 2 or 3 in the driver's seat for this league where you trade back from your spot. Whatever it is, you trade back, but you do not trade too far back. Do not trade 3, 4, 5 rounds back. Do not trade completely out. You inchworm back. Here's my inchworm right here, Bob. You see? It'd be cool if we had like a little effect. You inchworm back in the draft, and you either acquire later draft capital in the startup draft, or you acquire 2023 draft capital. And I'm not saying it because it's a 2023 class. I was doing it last year in startup drafts as well, where I was acquiring 2022 picks because, as Bob mentioned earlier, draft picks do not lose value. They gain value as time goes. They gain value. So the inchworm effect, I'm going to give you an example of a league I'm in right now. It's a Superflex tight end premium league, 12 team. And I went in with a game plan, and I wanted to try the 0 quarterback approach. I saw the Dynasty Rewind video on the 0 quarterback approach. I think it was Mike and you, and I watched it, and I wanted to try it. So I tried it. So I want you to judge this team here. We got Matt Ryan, Javonte Williams, Breece Hall, Michael Pittman, Marquise Brown, Chris Olave, TJ Hawkinson, AJ Dillon, Cole Kmet, Kadarius Toney, Chase Edmonds, Carson Wentz, Michael Carter, Khalil Herbert, Trubisky, Tyquan Thornton, Romeo Doubs, and Greg Dulcich. I still got like 4 or 5 picks. I'm in the middle of that draft right now. Your thoughts on that team just off the cusp there, Bob?
Just as you would expect, the quarterbacks are a little light. But now let's talk about how much draft capital you have built up.
All right. We have 223 first-round picks. We have 423 second-round picks. We have 223 third-round picks, 223 fourth-round picks, 224 second-round picks, 224 third-round picks, and 224 fourth-round picks.
Yeah, not too bad. I mean, we both employed this strategy, and you've been a little bit more aggressive about moving those assets for future assets. And
bingo.
I'm also going to say that you've got some bogus trades done in that league. But like I said, everybody's just bored, and they're just trading to trade. But it is one of those things where I love that, because the big thing to note there, and you mentioned it, is to not trade back far.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to move back rounds, because you missed out on 6 trades if you move 3 rounds back at least,
Yes.
because you can move 6 picks down, 6 picks down, 6
Mm-hmm.
picks down, 6 picks down.
Mm-hmm.
You can make 6 trades in 3 rounds, or you can make 1 trade in 3 rounds. Why does that make sense? Every trade, then, when you're trading down, you're acquiring more assets, either a later pick in this draft, or you're flopping picks and flipping a pick to move up later, and then you should still probably get a uh, rookie pick later as well. But yeah, absolutely, definitely that inchworm strategy, and you can use it in rookie drafts too, to move back a little bit, still get, you touched on it earlier with your
Yeah. The
moving down from the
106.
101 to the 106 to the 108 or whatever, getting Olave, Pittman, and a pick next year.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, go ahead, Zach.
No, the only thing as I wanted to address is the reason why I think that is a good approach is not because I believe in the 23 draft class. I do believe in
Yeah,
that class,
for sure.
but I'm not the person that's going to, if I feel my team is competitive, sell off because of that draft class. And you are witness to this in the Patreon League. I had so many picks after the startup draft, and I used them. I've used them now. Teams changed their mind. They got desperate. They saw their roster. They saw how old it was or how it wasn't going to compete, and they sold those pieces. I got Travis Kelce. I think I traded for Carson Wentz. It's a super flex league. So, and I what I still did is I still have a pick in each round next year. I'm not going to sell those picks. But that's what you can either use it to make your team competitive when teams change course. When teams start the season 0-4, you can trade for those, and you have extra assets now to do that. Or you can do the productive struggle year one, and next year, draft the younger players and input those players onto your roster. Like, that's not a bad plan either. But the reason why I love this plan is because there are 11 other people in your league. Somebody is going to change their mind on their team. Somebody's going to look at their team after the startup draft and just say, this is terrible. I'm so old. There's a 1-year window here. Let me move off. And I got Travis Kelce in our patron league, like in our tight end premium league. Yeah, and I think
Super tight end premium.
I think I traded Treylon Burks. Like, teams will change their mind, and you will be in the driver's seat to capitalize on that.
Yep, I agree 100%. I think, and you made a great point too, not just focusing on the next year, but if it's the 2024 class, if it's a 2025 class, when you're drafting, start with the next year draft capital. And then, feel free to, if the team necessarily doesn't have 20 next year picks to move, target the next year, because those picks are going to be as cheap now as they ever will be. Because as we get closer and closer to that draft, as we get closer to the 24 draft, every single day that passes, that capital increases in value, and how harder it is going to be for you to get it. So I think, the interim strategy in drafts, rookie drafts, startup drafts, whatever, if you can trade in your drafts, huge move. And I do think, another point you touched on is not staying in your same spot. I think in that same draft, I think I drafted from my spot like twice in the draft. Otherwise, I was moving picks down, moving picks. I actually never moved up in that draft. Or no, I think I did once with you maybe, but neither here nor there. But it's one of those things where I think if you stick to your spot, you handicap yourself so much, because you're getting players that fall that you may or may not love, but then you're missing out on trading down and getting picks for next year and building your asset pool. It's one of those things that, I don't know. I don't love, but
yeah. And the most important part about that, Bob, too, is, again, going into the draft with a plan. And I've really enjoyed this process where over the last 2 months, I've probably done 4 or 5 startup drafts and employed different strategies to just teach myself, where are people valuing certain players, and that value changes. Like Gabe Davis a couple weeks ago was going the 12th round. Now he's going 9th or 10th round. For me, it is an educational aspect where I can learn things and contribute to this channel. But at the same time, I'm employing different strategies. I'm going 0 quarterback. I'm going 0 running back. I'm going complete rebuild year one. Like, I'm going for the championship. I'm trying different things. And that's what makes it so fun, is like, if you're going to have more than 3 or 4 leagues, you got to try different things. Otherwise, you're just going to have the same team. That was my first share of Breece Hall. I don't have Breece Hall in any other league. And I was like, oh, this is cool. All right, cool. Now I can be excited when Breece Hall has a big game.
Yeah, there you go. So, Zach, kicking it to you. What pick in 2023 is Wentworth, and what will he do in DC?
I see people from my other leagues are in here asking these questions. I've had this dialogue a lot, and I know that's why Chris is bringing this comment to our attention. I kind of want to see where you're at here. Actually, Bob, let me see where you're at on this, because I don't want to give my opinion and you just go, I agree. I want to know what you say first, and then I'll because this comment is probably addressed towards you because of me.
Oh, maybe, sure. I'm thinking I struggle anything more than a 23 second with Wentz. But I think he'll be fine in DC. But I'm not expecting a resurgence of a career or anything. But in Superflex, he's a worthwhile quarterback, but he ain't worth a first in my book. You can creep into that early 23 second range, but I don't love it.
That's exactly what I said. Exactly what I said. He has no job security past this year. Like,
yeah,
it's a $0 dead cap hit for the Commanders to move on. $0. There's no job security there whatsoever. I'm not trading a first round pick. That's why this comment was brought in here. I know it.
Fair enough. Your buddy Don chiming in. F them picks or picks over everything. I am. Anybody who's listened to me open my mouth knows that I'm in very much on having draft capital. Any team that doesn't have draft capital for me is a team that I'm worried about. I can't get behind. If you have assets to burn, okay, fine. Like if you have several first round picks, I'm fine with moving one or two of them to acquire proven talent. But I still want draft capital in next year's draft. I don't want to hamstring myself and not have draft capital, because I think if you don't have a ton of picks, if you don't have a deep roster of players, you're kind of ending up pigeonholing yourself one way or the other, and that's just something I don't want to do in my dynasty leagues. So,
well, let me present you with this, because I know Don very well, and what Don does, or Donnie, I hate calling him Don. What Donnie does is he uses his picks. His teams are always competitive. He's always competing for a championship. I think last year he made it to the Final Four. Won like 10 straight games. He had J.K. Dobbins and Cam Akers in our league. Both got injured in the preseason, still made the playoffs. I was one of those teams that picked up J.K. Dobbins for a first-round pick. What Don does, and let me know about this strategy, because this is a strategy too, which, by the way, I didn't even know what FTP means. So I was like, what does that mean? What Don does is he uses draft picks to make his team better that season. And then prior to the draft, he will sell off some pieces for draft picks. So he puts the onus on somebody else to carry those draft picks while they do have value, but you can't use them until the offseason.
Sure.
And then he goes out and reacquires picks. Like, he got the 101 from me. He made me a good offer though. So that's an interesting strategy too. There's no name for that. There's no term, but he uses the draft capital to make his team better for a 1-year snapshot picture. And then after that year's over, he will go and reacquire picks. Like he's a wheeling dealing machine, Donnie. It's an interesting strategy.
Yeah, I think it's pretty solid, honestly, especially if you could. But I think the problem is you have to be good at executing that strategy. Like, you have to be calculated with it, and you have to make the right moves. And I don't necessarily have an issue with it, because to each their own. Whatever you have success with, you have success with. I don't hate it, but I always feel like after the season, I struggle getting draft capital. I struggle getting draft capital back if I move it. So that's why I wouldn't probably do this, at least in my leagues. In the leagues I have now, I struggle getting draft capital back after the season. Best time for me to get draft capital is like now or during the season, if I'm, trying to rebuild, or just, hey, I'm done this year. I'm, not going to make the playoffs, or I'm not going to be competitive enough to win it. But I don't hate it. I think it's a fine strategy. I'd call it like the delayed draft capital strategy or something like that. I don't know. Something.
It is a smart approach. Like when I think about it, it's a smart approach. And,
it makes sense.
He is very willing to move pieces to get those draft picks back. Like, he is a wheeling dealing machine.
It's a strategy for sure, and I don't hate it, because those draft picks aren't going to score you any points this year.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
if you're flushing out your roster with some proven talent and some, heavy hitters that are actually going to help you win a championship, because we know that's at the end of the day, you want to win a championship, and hopefully you're not killing yourself for the rest of your time in the dynasty league. That's the ultimate dream. I know some people are willing to make the full mistake, but I am not. Your brother chiming in again. Thoughts on the 2024 draft, weak or strong? From what I've heard from Nate,
I have no
it,
idea.
it sounds it sounds like the 24 draft is going to be just about as good as the 23 draft. I think it's supposed to be a little stronger at wide receiver that year than running back, but I think it's still going to be a draft that you want to trade into and trade for now, because otherwise, it's that price is only going up. Your buddy Don chiming in.
Where's all your buddies, man?
I don't have friends, so it's okay.
I'm your friend.
But I know. None of business chiming in. 10 team Superflex. Start 10, 223 first, one mid, one late ish, and a 23 late second, or CeeDee Lamb and Godwin. I think I'm fine with Godwin here, or the CeeDee Lamb and Godwin side here. I think I want those two. I think that's pretty solid value for getting both of them, honestly. What do you think here, Zach?
I feel like I know who this is. I feel like I know who this none your business is. Yeah, I probably go with Godwin over Lamb, just because
You get both. You get both.
yeah, that's true. I'm reading it wrong. No, definitely Lamb and Godwin. Definitely Lamb and
Yeah.
Godwin. It's a 10
I
team. I
think
mean,
that's an awesome price.
every team's loaded. Like, yeah, go. That puts you in a position to make an immediate run for a championship.
Yeah,
Those two
I
wide
mean
receivers. Yeah.
your wide receiver room is stacked at that point. I mean, no matter what else you have, unless you have literally nobody, your wide receiver room is now stacked. But and then little thanks for the content. Glad I cut you laugh. Glad you were able to be here. Pretty excited about that. Let's talk about T. Higgins in Dynasty. Young dude, but I'm starting to think he's overvalued. What would you want back in a trade for him? Absolutely, Connor. You and I are on the same wavelength here. Just a guy that, don't get me wrong, T. Higgins is a good player and a decent asset to have. But I just think that I'm going to get rid of this banner now. It's supposed to be gone. Silly me. But getting back to this, let me try to find it again. Zach, what are your thoughts on T. Higgins? Are you kind of in that same boat? Do you think he's overvalued as well at this point?
It's such a tough one, because he had a great season last year, but he's the wide receiver 2 in the offense. And it's one of those things where, like, obviously if Jamar Chase gets injured or something, he's going to be a wide receiver 1, guaranteed.
That, though.
Yeah, but it's like I don't want to limit the ceiling on my players, and I feel like you're limiting the ceiling on relying on a wide receiver that's the second wide receiver in his offense to be one of your wide receiver 1s. That's a tough spot,
Yeah.
And for what you can possibly get in a trade for him, it's a spot to me where I don't think I have any T. Higgins shares, and because I don't like limiting the ceiling on my players, I'm not sure I'm going out to acquire T. Higgins, and that could be a mistake on my part. It's such a tough one. That is a very, very tough question because of where he's being valued, where he's being drafted right now, his ADP in startup drafts. I don't want to touch that. I don't want to touch that in the startup draft, just because I don't ever seeing him being the wide receiver 1 in that offense. So if you believe in T. Higgins, sure, but I just don't. And it's not because of T. Higgins. It's because I don't want to limit the ceiling on a player that I'm going to have to pay wide receiver 1 price for, either in ADP or in a trade. So to me, I'm staying away from it.
Here's my big thing with T. Higgins is, again, I don't think he's a bad asset. I just think he's overvalued because he's being valued and drafted as a top 10 dynasty wide receiver. And I think it's closer to like top 7, looking at both DLF and keep trade cut. And so you're drafting him as a wide receiver 1 on your team, or you're paying up to get a wide receiver 1 on your team that isn't even the wide receiver 1 on his own team. And nothing against T. Higgins. Again, like I said, I don't have issue with him. I have an issue with the cost and the value of him right now. It's one of those things where you look at last year, what they did on the field together. I think they had 1 game, maybe 2, where they both had good games. Otherwise, it was the Jamar Chase show or it was the T. Higgins show. Not a lot of in between, not a lot of games where they were both doing well. And I don't really want a player that's all boom or bust, like I think T. Higgins kind of is at this point. Now, everyone's expecting that offense to take a step forward, which is fine, I think. But and unless that offense is historically good, I don't think we see two wide receiver ones. And I will say T. Higgins, I believe on PP points per game was wide receiver 13 or 15 last year. So he was close to wide receiver one, but I mean, I still think you need a pretty big year out of him. But if you can get something like seeing that he's valued as a top 10 wide receiver in Dynasty, I think you can get a mid to early 23 first back for him and be pretty happy. If you can do one of those tear down trades, like say T. Higgins to Rashad Bateman, the tear down quote of the year or the summer for Bob is tear down to Rashad Bateman plus for any wide receiver who's overvalued. T. Higgins to, let's say, Rashad Bateman, and I think you could probably get a late first, early second next year on top. And I think I'd be pretty happy with that personally. I think Rashad Bateman's just going to give you more consistent production, and that's what I chase in my teams. I don't really want guys that are having 5-point games and then 23-point games. I want guys who are in that 15 to 18 points regularly.
Exactly.
And their like low game is like 10 points, which I think Rashad Bateman in a PPR is probably going to be. So that's just me. Again,
I'm looking here, Bob, in the startup draft that I'm in. T. Higgins went in the third round, 3-7. No way.
What number wide receiver was he?
I gotta count, but and this is a half-point PPR league, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sixth.
I can't do that. I can't.
He went in front of right after Higgins, Waddle, Diggs, and Debo went right after. Like, I'm not taking T. Higgins over any of those three.
No.
And then Bateman went 6-6. So
10 team 0.5 PPR Superflex start 10 trade Jonathan Taylor and a 23 second for Jamar Chase and a 23 first. First would give me 423 first. I also have Brees, Swift, Dillon as running backs. I don't love it personally, because the fact that you're just upgrading the pick next year to be a 23 first, you're not really gaining an asset there. I don't know. I'm not huge on that. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, in a half-point PPR, I think running backs have more value than do wide receivers. So I don't think I'd be trading Jonathan Taylor. I really don't.
Yeah.
Like, and as you mentioned, you're not really upgrading. I wonder what his wide receiver situation is like.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
But if you have 323 first, if it's that bad, you can use 1 or 2 to trade for a player. Like, if you have JT, you're already in the driver's seat to a playoff spot,
Yeah.
So this is I just don't know how much better Jamar Chase and a 23 first makes you. Like, running backs are way more valuable in half-point PPR. If it was full-point PPR, that might change the situation.
The only way I think I want to make this move is if I'm in like a pretty harsh rebuild. But looking at these running backs, I mean, you're at least 3 deep. So
I try to trade Brees there. Try to trade Brees.
Yeah,
you could still get as much value.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't love it. I don't hate it, but I definitely don't love it.
How did this team draft 101?
I don't know, man. Things could have traded for the pick. I have a dynasty question. I have the 1-1, the 1-4, the 1-6 in a standard league. Do I really take a Jet at 1 and 4? I mean, I think you definitely take Brees Hall at 1. I think that's fine. I don't know if I wouldn't pencil in Garrett Wilson at 4. I don't think you have to. I don't think he's, I probably wouldn't. I'm getting increasingly lower on Garrett Wilson as the days go by, and that Jets offense in general, outside of Brees Hall, because he's still a running back who is going to get the bulk of the work, and that has value even on a not awesome offense. So I think pencil in Brees, see what's there at 4, and you can go with Jameson Williams. You can go with Drake London might be there. Kenneth Walker might be there. So I don't think you necessarily have to pencil in a 2 Jets on your team if you don't want to. What are your thoughts here, Zach?
I think what I'm trying to do here is trying to package that 1-4 and 1-6 and get myself some Drake London.
Sure, get the 1-2. There you go.
Yeah, get yourself a 20. Get yourself a second round pick back or a 23 second round pick back. I mean, a 1-4 and 1-6 for 1-2 is not. It's not a fair trade. So see if you can get some more on the back end of that. But I'd be trying to get Brees and Drake London. And I've noticed that in rookie drafts as of late, Drake London is going 102. I know
Yeah.
early in the offseason, it was Brees, Kenneth Walker, Drake London. Now that has changed because of the running back situation in Seattle, and the team just sucks. Like that team's going to be down 28-10 at every halftime of the game and be forced to throw the ball. So I would try, Alyssa, to move up to 102 and see what it would possibly take. And, if I was the 102 and somebody came in with a 104 or 106, I'd be like, damn, that is hard to pass up. Obviously, they have to give up something on the back end, but I try to get Brees and Drake London in this situation.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I like that move to trade up. You don't necessarily need both of those. I think you're kind of still in the same tier of players at 1-4, 1-6 that you would be. So I like the move up idea. I like that a lot. And then maybe you tack on a 23 second on your side or what you're receiving back from the 1-4, 1-6 to 1-2. I think I like that a lot. But next one, trade Trey Lance for Tom Brady and a 23 second and 2024 first. Assuming this is super flex league, I think I'd rather keep Trey Lance.
Yeah.
Brady, I think, is a 1-year rental. I know picks are cool, and very rarely am I, an advocate of keeping the smaller side of the deal. But I think in this case, I am. Just in youth and those packages, or the rest of the package, the picks are just 24 first is cool, 23 second is cool too. But
what if the offer was changed to Brady, a 23 first and a 24 first, or if they just flip flopped like a 23 first and a 23 second? That might change my mind.
I'd be a little interested because you're recouping value faster on what you give up. You could that 23 first. I don't necessarily see it happening, but that 23 first could turn into a quarterback that ultimately replaces Tom Brady, who could retire after this year. To which at the point you're kind of, making a lateral move, plus you're getting another pick in the next year. So I think that would be fine. But at its current state, that would be my counter. But at this state, I'm not really
I
willing to
would counter Brady and a 23 and 24 first. And I might take Brady a 23 first and a 24 second, but I'd counter at a first each. And I say, listen, I believe Trey Lance is the next top 5 quarterback. So if you want to take him off my hands, this is what it would cost. See if you can do that.
I like that. You have 12 hours.
You're one of those expiring trade.
It sometimes there's some people I have to, because otherwise it just sits there forever. But how much should I get back in a trade for Leonard Fournette? Half point PPR, 12-team Dynasty. I'm rebuilding to make a 2024 or 2025 run. Man, if you can push for a couple seconds, I'd be pretty happy. Obviously, you'd like to get a first for a running back who should be, decent this year, you would think, although he has taken a bit of a damage hit due to some negative camp hype. So that doesn't help your case, being that it's half point, being that they drafted Rachaad White. Rachaad White's been looking really good in OTAs and camp. So that'd be kind of the price I'd looking to get. I mean, you definitely want to move off him. You could also try to move, instead of for picks, you could also try to move for a player. You can move for, a rookie wide receiver this year. Or, I don't think you're getting any of the running backs this year. His value is just kind of deflated right now, in my opinion. What are you thinking here, Zach?
I would wait to move Leonard Fournette until some more training camp injuries. Find a team that is running back desperate, or find a team that they themselves have a running back that got hurt. Let's see if you could trade for that running back. See if Travis Etienne, or not a Travis Etienne type injury or a J.K. Dobbins type injury happens to a player that is valued at a top 15 running back, and see if you can move Leonard Fournette in that. Because look, picks are nice and all, but if you can get yourself a running back that tore his ACL and he'll be back next year, I know everybody's J.K. Dobbins, Corey Clement. Like, I'm not worried about it, but maybe wait for some more injuries. Wait for the desperation to become real. And that might be the week before the season starts, because like Bob mentioned, the negative news on Fournette does not help your trade value. I do think that getting 2 seconds is nice, but I think you could get a little bit more. Yeah, that's me being very picky. I am very picky sometimes when I'm in a rebuild, because I need to squeeze all the proverbial juice out of this trade. So maybe wait till there's some more running back injuries and teams are desperate.
Yeah. I think you could say the same thing to Josh Jacobs here. If you can't, he's tried shipping him for a second rounder, but nobody wants him.
Oh, jeez,
Which is nuts to me.
jeez.
But I just hold and wait because at some point, unless he falls flat on his face and is dissolved of a role this year entirely, he's going to have more value than that come season. He's going to do more than what a second rounder is worth as a running back in what is hopefully going to be a good offense, decent offense. He's going to be worth more than that in the season. I'm going to just hold, wait and see with injuries and things like that come up. I'm just going to chill on that. What do you think here,
Yeah,
Zack?
I mean, I think Josh Jacobs holds a lot more value than just a second round pick. Like, this is a running back the last 2 years has finished as an RB1, really without getting that RB1 attention. Like last year, I think he had 210 carries, and he was surprisingly a big part of the passing game. I know the Raiders did have a lot of injuries last year. They had the Henry Ruggs situation happen, so they needed pass catchers, but Josh Jacobs is way more valuable than just a second round pick and like barely getting a second round pick. Man, like that's
Yeah,
disrespectful. That's disrespectful from your league mates.
yeah, that's some hate right there.
Yeah.
This one's catered for you. What do I do about Brandon Ayuk, talented receiver in a
Oh,
bad situation? I don't know if I could get good value for him at the moment. I definitely agree. You're not getting good value for him right now. So I think he's a hold. But Zach, what are your thoughts? The proverbial Brandon Ayuk truther of the channel. What are you thinking here?
I don't understand. And to this person, maybe they acquired Brandon Ayuk before getting to this channel. The one player in all of fantasy football I don't ever want to have on my team, at least right now, is Brandon Ayuk. And part of that is the situation with San Francisco. Like Kyle Shanahan always seems to find use out of other players, which is good on him. Like I am expecting Danny Gray to do something this season. I am expecting Tyrion Davis-Price to do something. Yeah, you was the first time you said Danny Gray, I'm like, who the hell is that? And then he gets drafted in the third round. I was like, who the hell is Danny Gray?
I felt really good about
Brandon Ayuk
that.
is so frustrating, and
Yeah.
every preseason he is in the doghouse. Like you go to Sleeper right now, and the last thing that's on Brandon Ayuk's bio is like, oh, he's struggling during off-season workouts. I guarantee it. Go right now, it'll be there. This dude is there's always a problem with Brandon Ayuk in San Francisco, and I just don't want any part of that. So, in a situation where you have him and you can't get the value from, like, you have no choice. You have no choice but to hang on here and wait for that one. And you hope and pray and do whatever. Hope it's week one. Hope it's week one so that you can move off, because I don't want to. What does that say?
Brandon Ayuk struggles during off-season
Thank
workouts.
you. Thank you. Every time it happens, like this dude can never do anything right in the preseason. I don't know what the situation is, what's happening in San Francisco. Brandon Ayuk is always in the doghouse. So you're left in a position where you just have to hold. You have to. And you hope and you pray that week one he does. But you put on a brave face. I love Brandon Ayuk. I love this guy. I'm starting him week one. You have to take the hit and start him week one to show everybody that you believe in him, because it is a sales job right now to try and trade Brandon Ayuk.
Oh, I love that. All right, moving moving on. 12-team PPR, got a rebuilding team about 2 years out. Would you trade Hunter Renfrow for Palmer and a 23 third, or Palmer and a 24 second? Trying to move off Renfrow. Me personally, I think you should be able to get more for Renfrow. Or it might be a case where you chill with him for a little bit, see what happens come season. Because if you're getting this, it doesn't really move the needle for me. I am not a Palmer fan, though. I think Zach is more of a Palmer
Yeah, I'm a
fan.
Palmer fan. Yeah,
I know I alluded to you being a Brandon Ayuk fan with elite level sarcasm, but yeah, no, I just don't love this deal personally. I would want give me a 23 second, and maybe a 23 third on top of Palmer, because I'm just not in on
damn.
Palmer.
Yeah,
For me, it's not even that. I honestly, I would probably do that deal if it's just the 23 second and the 23 third, honestly. But I just I think you should get more for Renfro personally. That's where I'm
I
at.
was literally going to say get a third and a second and a third. The reason
Yeah.
I did like Palmer coming out of college. He played with such a bad offense, and I think he was at Tennessee. It was like nobody at
Yeah.
quarterback. I think Jeremy
Yeah.
Pruitt is now in a bunch of these recruiting scandals. I did like Palmer coming out of college, and the fact that I like any player tethered to a top 5 offense. Like, how can you not? And obviously, Palmer's not at a point where you are starting him regularly, but there's always an opportunity with a 30-year-old Keenan Allen and a Mike Williams that doesn't like ever protect himself on the field. There's always an opportunity. I really like Palmer, and for that reason, I also like KJ Osborne because
Yep.
they play
Me
in
too.
high-powered offenses. They're the third receiving option, and they both have an older wide receiver in front of them. Like Osborne has Thielen. Thielen's
Yep.
31, 32, struggled with injuries last year. So those are values that I don't ever think will be a wide receiver one, but they're nice pieces to have on your bench. And if you look at KJ Osborne last year, like you could start KJ Osborne when Adam Thielen was hurt, and he
Yep.
produced. He produced.
Yep. I agree. And speaking of that, your buddy Donnie chiming in again. Thoughts on the philosophy of handcuffing elite wide receivers? Some examples: Boyd for Chase, Van Jefferson for Cup, KJ Osborne for JJ. Any value in the strategy? I think I don't disagree with this idea. I wouldn't like target it, but I don't hate it. I think Van Jefferson is more of a cuff for like Allen Robinson, and Osborne is for Adam Thielen. But I get what you're saying. Getting those value wide receivers in high power offenses, I think is a good play. I just think in general, because if worst case, I think they're a flex consideration. And then if there is an injury to another one of the higher talented players on the team, I think those guys slot in to be more of starting wide receiver contention there. Your thoughts here, Zach?
Yeah, it just depends on the roster size, right? Like how many roster
Sure.
spots can you hold? If you can hold 30 players, sure, it's not a terrible idea. I really like KJ Osborne. I think I'm a little partial to that. He also went to college in Miami, so I've been following him for a while. I'm surprised that he's made a name for himself in the NFL. Has done really, really well. But I think a lot of things you're hearing is like Minnesota's going to be passing the ball quite a bit. Like we're hearing Dalvin Cook is lining up in the slot. This new offense that they're going to have is going to have 3 wide receiver sets, which is great for KJ Osborne. But none of these are ever startable without an injury. So I like it for protection, but like I think it's a really good point that Bob brought up. It's like Justin Jefferson is 24, 25 years old. Like you can't really rely on him getting hurt. So if there are better options for you, if there's you can go out there and grab like Robert Woods, for example, is a great insurance policy to have on your bench is what I'm saying, as opposed to a KJ. Like I'd rather have Robert Woods over KJ Osborne. But that's because I think no.
No.
All right, fair enough. I would. But it's
That's
not a bad
fine.
idea depending on roster size.
Yeah, I agree. I think it boils down to that. But moving on, is this a good time to sell high on Gabe Davis?
Ah,
Zach, you've recently started drinking the Gabe Davis Kool-Aid, so
damn.
this is fun. But
Look,
I think it's
sometimes I'm
always been a
wrong.
good time.
Sometimes I'm wrong, and I'm a big man, and I can admit it. And I have changed core. I was Brandon Ayuk out on Gabe Davis 6 months ago, and I've changed my philosophy on that. Let me first of all say that in South Florida, I've been on the sports radio down here. I'm a UM guy. We hate UCF. We hate UCF because their fake national championship that they were touting 5 years ago. Gabe Davis went to UCF, so that's kind of where I start with Gabe Davis. But the fact of the matter is he is the wide receiver 2 on a top 3 offense in the NFL with a top 3 quarterback that's 27 years old. There is tremendous value in that. And I don't know if it's going to work out for Gabe Davis because, they did go out there and address pass catching options. They drafted James Cook. They did draft, I think it was Khalil Shakur that they drafted. They also signed OJ Howard in free agency and Jamison Crowder in free agency as well. None of those particularly take away from Gabe Davis. There's just a lot going on in Buffalo. And Devin Singletary had a very good last 6 games of the season, I would say. But I like Gabe Davis now. I've really changed my stance on Gabe Davis the last 6 months. So depends where your team is, because I really would like to have Gabe Davis on my team. He's 25 years old, entering the third year of his career. I think he's still under contract for 2 years, but any wide receiver that's starting and tied to a top 3 offense and a top 3 quarterback that's under 30, dang, that is a really good opportunity. And you might be able to sell higher. Like, he has another 4 touchdown game. And what is the value of that,
That's true.
So, yes, it's a great time to sell high, but it could also be a bad time because you might be able to sell higher later. But I also, I would like to acquire Gabe Davis. And Gabe Davis is in that category of players we talked about earlier that are going for way more than what they're worth. So, yes, it's a great time to sell Gabe Davis, but I'd like to have Gabe Davis on my team if I were you.
Yeah, I think if you got him, when he was still a value like last year or, his rookie or whatever, I think you can hold him. And I think that's fine. I think if you need to move assets to make up some ground in a rebuild, whatever, gives you some flexibility, or you can just hold and see if he pops off for even more. Let's go on. Here's a question from Gator with the news of Philly backfield. Who's your guy going after there? This is a backfield I'm avoiding, Zach. Like you said earlier, I don't want Miles Sanders. I don't want Kenny Gainwell. I don't have a guy there personally. I don't know how you feel. We kind of touched on it a little earlier, but I don't want anything with Miles Sanders. I've been burned on him enough. I'm over it. I'm done with the abusive relationship that was me and Miles Sanders. So that is where I'm at. I don't know if you have anything to add there.
I'm not totally out on that backfield. I kind of still like Miles Davis, and it's probably because I've never really had Miles Sanders, I should say. I've never really had Miles Sanders before, so I'm kind of in on Miles Sanders. Although I don't love the news about him being running reps with the second team, but I'm also not overreacting to news I'm hearing right now. So I do like Kenny Gainwell. I do like Miles Sanders, but I don't like them to be anywhere near RB1 status. So they're guys that are on my bench, potential flex play, bye week play, injury week play. Nothing. I am not relying on anybody from those backfields.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. To touch on a point we made before, disagree that you can't estimate draft picks. I know my league. I know who sucks. They're projected to be bad, and they are bad. Plus, I hate their players, and I have 3 first in 1 league. I probably get the 101. I think that you can absolutely do this in some leagues where there is, a clear disparity between who's good and who's not. I think you can do that. But I think a lot of leagues, especially if you're a brand new league, there's not a ton of disparity usually yet where you can be like, oh, yeah, this team's going to suck. That team's going to suck. I think there's definitely a scenario at some point where you know your league well enough where teams are bad. There's a guy in the league that I'm in. He's had the 101 for 5 years straight. And
come on, Mike.
Part of Jesus. Oddly enough, his name is Mike, but not our Mike Bauer. But he keeps trading away his 101 every year for not a lot and never ending up with anything for it. So, I mean, you can always, if a team is not adding new capital or new players or anything like that, absolutely. It's kind of a cop out to say that you can or can't. I would just say, I think it's safer to avoid that practice of assuming this pick is going to be high or low, because some people aren't going to be able to discern who is good, who is bad. And then you're going to be putting a top value on a pick that's supposed to be high, and then it ends up being 108, like we mentioned. So I think there's a fine line where you can be with there. If you know your league and you're very confident that team's going to be bad, hey, I'm not going to say don't do it. I'm going to say don't do it if you're unsure, is the cop-out answer I'm going to say. So what are some bad teams with valuable players?
Ooh.
I think a great one's Jacksonville right now. I think they're a pretty bad team. Christian Kirk, I know you're not high on because the contract was too much. And then Travis Etienne, a high-value player that, is on that cusp of needing to break out before we pay what we have to pay to get him. But that was the first team that came to mind. And you look at Trevor Lawrence, if you're in a super flex too, I think he's actually still pretty well valued. I think he's still like a top 12 quarterback in super flex startups, which after his first year, which was awful, shocks me. I mean,
Mhm.
he had one of the worst rookie seasons out of everybody last year. Granted, he had one of the worst supporting casts, but I think that's a pretty good example. I think the Jets have some valuable players too,
I think the
and I do
Texans.
think Texans have some valuable players, especially Brandon Cooks. Everybody always says he's undervalued and this and that, but I think the fact that everybody says he's undervalued tells me that he's either properly valued or actually overvalued at this point. Maybe a controversial take there, but yeah. So I mean, do you have any other teams that you can think of that have
No,
some
I think
valuable
the
players?
first team that came to mind was the Texans because like somebody's
Sure,
going to have to run the ball there. And if
sure,
you look last year, Davis Mills had some very good games against very good teams. So what that
yeah,
says to me is, while I look at Seattle and I think they're going to be losing every game 28-10 at halftime, I don't think the same thing for the Texans. So I think that and maybe they feed all three of those running backs with Pierce, Mack, and who's the Burkhead. Maybe they feed
Burkhead.
all three, but uh, I could see Mack or Pierce having a very quietly good season, like a top 20 running back season, because I don't think they're going to be behind every single game 28-10, like I think Seattle will be. So
Yeah,
I'm very interested in the Texans. I've been saying Brandon Cooks every single audit we do, because of the price that's baked into to acquire him, and he's been top 15, 20 wide receiver that hasn't missed games for 4 or 5 years now. And now I'm a little curious as to who is the second pass catcher in Houston now that Mechie's out.
Nico.
Yeah, it's a very interesting scenario that I'm keeping my eye on. I don't think I'd be relying on anybody besides Brandon Cooks, but I secretly really like the backfield of Marlon Mack and Dameon Pierce. And I don't know who comes out at the end of the season carrying the ball more, but I like them both. Like I've liked Marlon Mack ever since he was at USF. I think he had very productive seasons with the Colts until he tore his Achilles. And it's been 2 years since that injury now. We're seeing players now come back from Achilles in 6 months. So, I
Yeah,
mean, we're going to learn a lot about Achilles this year. That's for sure.
yeah,
But him and
100%.
Dameon Pierce, I really, really like both of them. I can't say that I'd be starting one consistently, but I like both of them and their potential. Like to have both of
Yeah,
them would be great because I think one of them is going to come out looking pretty good at the end of the year.
sure. Good deal. Um, Patty Mills chiming in again. How do you get the league to trade in a startup? Say the league is pretty new players and they don't want to get fleeced or taken advantage of.
Ah,
I think
I got
we
the
touched on.
answer.
Is it trade calculator? Because that's where I was going
But
to.
it's show them the trade calculator.
Well,
And I
right.
know you
Yeah.
hate that, Bob. I know
I
you
I
hate that.
I hate it when it's a bad trade. Like, because the thing is okay. The trade calculator can tell you one thing, but if I still don't like the trade, I don't want to see your trade calculator telling me that it's a good trade because I still don't like the trade. So don't show me your trade calculator. But that is the route to take. I mean, whatever calculator you're using, it's kind of a way to just be transparent to like saying, because trade calculators aren't always perfect. We can say that. We can agree with that because my value of a player does not equate what the trade calculator's value of a player is and picks and vice versa. So it's one of those things where you can do that to just show that, hey, at least per this is a fair trade. And I think that's fair because you're doing that. You're doing the due diligence to say, hey, this is this. This is the information now to do with what you will. It's still your call at the end of the day to make. You can not make a trade. You can make a trade. If you don't think it's a good one, don't make it. If you think it's a great trade, make it. Be happy with it. I think that's the best way to go about it personally.
Yeah, for me, Bob, trade calculators aren't when I use them. If the person says they don't want to trade, that's one thing. But if they
Sure.
don't want to be fleeced, I am showing you. And again, like people have these opinions on this kind. That's fine. You don't like it. That's fine. There's 4 or 5 different calculators you can use. It's just a reference point. Look at this. This says you're not getting fleeced. So I don't think there's obviously some difference from one trade calculator to the other, but there's
Sure.
not this overwhelming difference where one calculator is going to say this is a fair trade, and then the other one's going to say, oh, this team's winning by 50%. That's not going to happen. So a trade calculator to me is a reference point to where both parties have said they want to trade, because if both parties don't want to trade, conversation ends right there. I'm not going to shove my calculation in your face and say, "Oh, look at this. This is a fair trade." Like, no,
That's
if they
what I'm
don't want to,
saying. Pisses me
right.
off.
If they don't want to trade, they don't want to trade. However, if both teams want to trade and they're asking for too much, then I say, what I offered is very fair. And
Right.
and you have to draw a line, because most of the time people want to trade. They want to do. There's like let me get that hit. It's true. It's true, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's just true. People want to trade, and you draw the line. Say, this is my offer, and I'm okay if you don't want to accept that, but this is what I'm going to offer. I cannot offer you anymore. And the calculator is a way to just say, look, you're not getting fleeced. So introduce it to I in the startup draft I'm in now. I had a dialogue with somebody who wanted to trade up, and I'm like, this offer is terrible. Let me show it to you on the calculator. And he was like, oh, wow, what is this? Like, what is this tool? And now every time he's using the calculator with me. But show them the calculators. Keep Trade Cut. They have a trade calculator that does, you just have to click a button and it will account for startup draft picks.
Okay, nice. Very cool. This is a question for Mike, who's not here, unfortunately. Should I start adding random amounts of fab for all of my trades? Because that is a big Mike thing to do. No, you don't have to do that. You can if you want. Mike does it to assert his dominance with his 101 team, but I don't think it's something you have to do.
That's so funny. I'm in a league with Mike, and took over an orphan team in one of his leagues, and I made a trade with him for Debo. And I think the thing that put it over the top was the fab that I had.
Yeah, he always does. He just wants fab, so he can pick up his, late round darlings. But Garrett Wilson or a mid to late 23 first and a late third. I'm going to go ahead with that mid to late 23 first. I just think better than Garrett Wilson, and I don't see a world where Garrett Wilson is a high-end wide receiver one. Maybe you get a back-end wide receiver one, best case scenario, but I think he's more than likely going to be a top-end wide receiver two, and that's okay. But it's about appropriating value for players like that. And I think this deal here, great way to get out and get a better option, in my opinion. Thoughts here, Zach?
It's tough. I really liked Garrett Wilson before his landing on the Jets. That's a really tough one, because that's a very good offer to get the 23 first and third. And I would imagine, Jeremy, that your team was picking in the top 5, top 6, because you have, I mean, again, this is just an assumption, but I'm going to assume you had your own draft pick to make that. So you there's a part, right, to a rebuild, Bob, where you have to commit.
Sure.
And I don't know how long. Again, I am just assuming here. I don't have a lot of the information, Jeremy, but I'm assuming that your team was picking in top half of the first round. So you're trying to now compete. And what this does is, this is a great trade offer. It's you're getting adequate value, but you're resetting the clock all over again.
Yep.
So how much do you want to do that? How much do you want to continue to not be competing as much as, because like you said earlier, Bob, picks don't score points. So picks are great. I love having picks, but at a certain point, you have to commit to, this is my plan. I'm drafting this player. I'm moving forward with. I drafted Olave in a lot of leagues. I'm not trading him. You can offer me a first and third. I'm not trading him. I made a plan, and I have succeeded so far in the plan that you have to have a plan. Okay, have a plan in your dynasty league. That's the number one thing I tell everybody. Have a plan. Otherwise, you're just floating around in the black abyss of dynasty fantasy football. Have a plan and stick to it. So, Jeremy, this really depends on what your plan is to me, because do you want to reset the clock all over again on getting another receiver next year and waiting for that receiver to develop and be the potential wide receiver one that can't? It's up to you. It's up to it is very good value, though, that you're being offered. I'll say that.
Yeah. And I think, too, it comes down to the piece you're moving, because I think you're making a great point with, if it was Drake London, I'd be a lot more inclined to keep the player.
Right.
If it was even Chris Olave, like you mentioned, I'd be a lot more inclined to keep the player. Just because I think, based on where Olave is now versus where Wilson is, I think Olave has potential to be better than Wilson. And I think Olave's always been slept on, especially on this channel, for what it's worth. But
Olave was better than Wilson every year except for one.
Yeah. So there, boom, roasted. Who would you be looking to get for Cooper Kupp? I want the world for Cooper Kupp. I think you should be getting multiple firsts and probably a player of some decent stature. I mean, Cooper Kupp is still a top 5 dynasty wide receiver, even though he's older. He's got at least 2 years left, rocking with Matthew Stafford.
Mm-hmm.
You should be getting a lot for Cooper Kupp still. You should be getting probably 3 to 4 assets, 2 of which should be first round picks. And then probably those other 2 picks should equate to another first. In my opinion, might be a little rich to some, but you know, you're getting what you pay for with Cooper Kupp. You know he's a proven commodity.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question marks with Cooper Kupp. Granted, I'll say that he's probably not going to repeat what he did last year. So, you know, you're kind of asking lightning to strike twice, but kind of a good reason to move him if you're in a rebuild. Your thoughts here, Zach? Are you kind of in the same boat?
Yeah, I mean, this is a player that's going in the first 2 rounds of a startup draft. I don't think he's going first round, but in Dynasty, I should say. In redraft, he probably is going in the first round. In Dynasty, he's going in the top 2 rounds. So what would it cost you to move into the top 2 rounds of your Dynasty startup draft? That's how I would process that trade in my head.
Sure.
Like if somebody's trying to move up to get Cooper Kupp, what is that going to cost? It costs a lot. And like you said, tethered to Matthew Stafford. They both just re-signed contracts, so they're both going to be there for 3 seasons at least, I believe. Yeah. In that offense, another year in that offense. I agree. I don't think he repeats last year. Last year, there was a lot of like who is going to play next to Cooper Kupp. It was Robert Woods, and then it was Odell Beckham, and then Van Jefferson had some games. I think there's a little bit more stability in their pass catching game. Even Van Jefferson has another year in that offense, and I do like Allen Robinson as well. And Cam Akers is back, and he's going to be a part of that offense. We saw how much McVay wanted to use Akers in the Super Bowl, even though he looked terrible. So Cooper Kupp is you should be getting a lot. Like would the conversation start for you, Bob, at 2 first-round picks?
Oh yeah. I think, and then you can kind of finagle with what you want to do after that. But I don't hate that. That's where I'd want to be.
Like start. But when it comes to a player like that, I always say this is where the conversation starts, because you can filter out a lot of wasted time that way. Because if you're not willing to offer that, I'm not willing to trade this player. End of story.
Yeah. So selling Nick Chubb in Dynasty 2024 first and a second enough. If it was 23, does that change your mind?
Yes.
A little bit.
You have to account the amount of time it takes for you to get that payoff in the trade. You're waiting 2 years to get something back in that trade. That's too long. Like, no way am I selling Nick Chubb for a 24 first and second. You gotta, people are trading, and even now Sleeper allows you to trade 2025 picks. Like, you cannot fall in love with the first round pick name in front of the year. If you got to wait 2 or 3 years for the payoff, it's going to cost you even more. Like, if you want to give me a 24 first and second, I probably should at least get a 23 second added into that. Plus a player like a lower tier rookie, a Wan'Dale Robinson or a Tyler Algier in there. Like, you got to make it worth me to wait for 2 years for this payoff. That has to factor into the trade. People don't think about that. When I bring up the payoff time, like, what are you talking about? I got to wait 2 years for that, man. I got to wait 2 years, which is forever in a dynasty league.
Yeah, I agree. Elijah Moore is seller a hold. 12 teams flex. He's one of my flexes where I play 3 wide receiver and 2 flex, so I'm not relying on him a ton. I'm holding Elijah Moore. I selling wise, I just don't think you can get a lot for him right now. I mentioned this. I was offered 23 first for him this last week. Said no. And which honestly, that's not bad value. I just really like the player, and I think he has just a chance of any to be actually ahead of Garrett Wilson in terms of production. I know I'm probably going to catch a little heat for that. That's fine. And even if Wilson is ahead of Elijah Moore, how much is it realistically? Like, is it a wide receiver 2 versus a wide receiver 3? Maybe, but I think it's back end wide receiver 2 to high end wide receiver 3. But I think more than likely they're kind of both in that wide receiver 2 mix. So what are you thinking here, Zach? Elijah Moore, sell or hold? What are you trying to do with him? Or are you buying?
No, I'm not buying. Yeah, I probably hold. I'm a little bit worried with how much time he missed last year due to injury. This is like the numbers in terms of his measurables. His height and weight aren't things I'm in love with at the position, and he's a guy that is going to be going across the middle of the field a lot. It's not. I'm not necessarily selling Elijah Moore. I'm more of like a holding pattern, right? Like, how the hell is this Jets offense going to play out? Because they drafted a running back. They drafted one last year that had a good season. They drafted a wide receiver. They drafted a wide receiver last year that had a good season. So there's almost like too many things going on. Then they signed 2 tight ends and they drafted another. Like, what is going on? How are all those supposed to be fantasy relevant? So I think that it's a situation where having so many mouths to feed takes away from some of the other guys. That doesn't mean I'm selling Elijah Moore. I think I'm more holding and waiting to see what happens, how he looks in that offense. And a lot of that is going to be Zach Wilson. It's not necessarily a lot of like DJ Moore. It's not DJ Moore. That's the problem. It's that, like, he had a quarterback last year that threw 9 touchdowns. You want DJ Moore to have 9 touchdowns. Sam Darnold only threw 9 touchdowns last year.
Yeah. That would be an impressive target share, 100% touchdown share if that happened. But moving on, thoughts on the DK re-signing, good or bad? I hate it because I think he's probably 2 years out from having, at least 2 years out from having another decent quarterback situation. Because, okay, they're going to struggle through this year and be terrible with Geno Smith and Drew Lock playing roulette at quarterback. And then, okay, let's say they draft a rookie next year. Okay, well, if it's not one of the top 2 quarterbacks, CJ Stroud or Bryce Young, who are figured to be able to start day one, probably, in whatever offense they go to. Even then, maybe those 2 would be fine, but you're not going to get a quarterback that's great day one, I don't think, for DK. So I think you're 2 years away minimum from DK being really worth what you're having to pay to have him on your team if you don't have him, if you're trying to acquire him. And so for me, I've said it a lot on this channel, I'm selling DK everywhere I can, especially if I can still get anything close to what he was worth before Russell Wilson was moved. But DK is arguably in one of the worst situations, I think, out of any wide receiver in the league right now. And that might be bold to say, but I think he's up there. What are your thoughts here, Zach?
Yeah, that's another tough one because of the quarterback situation, as you highlighted there. I think the problem there, though, is that you are not going to get anything back in the trade return, and I am so happy I moved off DK before he.
I don't have him anywhere.
I don't have him anywhere either because I moved off of him before the Russ trade. I didn't like what I heard last year with Russ in Seattle, so I just moved off as soon as I could. However, I just don't think you're going to get the value back in the trade. Yeah. So I might be holding here. This is a 24-year-old wide receiver that I like. What is the floor right now for DK Metcalf? What's the floor?
I would say probably wide receiver 2, low end wide receiver 2.
That's what I'm thinking too. That's what I'm thinking too. Like, I don't think he finishes below wide receiver 24. So it's not great, but I don't think you're going to get the value back that you should if you had moved DK Metcalf like 6 months ago. I could tell you what I got back in a trade for him. You're not going to like it because you're not going to get that now. But I might be holding here. I'm not buying unless I'd buy if I could get him at the value that you might be able to get. Like, I don't think you have to pay a lot to get DK Metcalf right now. So I'd buy him if the cost was significantly low, but I'm holding if I have, because I'm not going to get the value that I should get back.
Yeah, I think it all comes. I hate having to hold him because I just think he's, if you have him on a rebuild, fine. Excuse me. I think he's fine to hold. But if you had him on a competitive team, this sucks. Like, this really took the wind out of your sails, I think, for, what could be a wide receiver 1-ish on your team. Yeah, it sucks to hold.
But hold on a second. Like, what if they go out and get Jimmy G? Like, just hold. Like, just relax.
Yeah. Even then, I'm not thrilled, but
sure. Yeah, but you're happy. You're happier about that than you are Geno Smith.
Sure. Yeah, like I said, I'd like to move him, but I'm not moving him if I can't get decent value. It doesn't make sense to move him. I would love to. I really would love to be rid of this situation.
I don't think that's a word.
Ridded. It is now. Put it in the dictionary.
I've actually submitted a word to the
Just-
dictionary before. It did not get accepted.
That is rough, man. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
So speaking of T-Law, what would you pay for him in a one quarterback league? What do you think? Second round pick? You fine with? Young quarterback, one quarterback league,
It's
tend to go
tough.
in the second-ish round anyway.
I don't think the owner of Trevor Lawrence would sell for a second round pick.
Yeah.
Like you got to look at last year and realize like everything that happened in Jacksonville was awful. And
Sure.
I don't think anybody puts the blame on Trevor Lawrence for that. Like he had a coach there last year that did not make him any better. And now he's got a coach in place that won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles. I'm kind of excited about what potentially could be the situation in Jacksonville for Trevor Lawrence. So I don't think you get Trevor Lawrence for a second round pick is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I think that's where I draw the line. If that doesn't get done, okay. I'm not out there running to go get Trevor Lawrence either. Like I don't have a lot of interest in him personally. Like I'm gonna let that situation play out.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't rule him as a buy low candidate, like a great one, especially in a one quarterback. If we're talking super flex, we can get into that a little bit. But in a one quarterback, I'm not rushing to go get Trevor Lawrence. Dalton Schultz for 2 seconds. Absolutely. Thank you. Bye. That was easy. What do you think, Zach? Are you buying Dalton Schultz for 2 second round picks?
I would buy, yeah. I would buy Dalton Schultz for 2 second round picks. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Here's the question. What if he's asking, would you sell Dalton Schultz for 2 second round picks?
Nope.
Thank you.
I mean, realistically, I don't hate the value there, but I'd much rather be buying. I'd keep Dalton Schultz. The value isn't terrible, I don't think, especially if you're looking at what the value really actually is for Dalton Schultz right now versus what we believe Dalton Schultz to be. I think it's not bad value. So we're both high on Dalton Schultz here. Are we buying Michael Thomas hype? I haven't seen any personally, but no, I'm not buying any Michael Thomas hype. I know.
I got something to say to Michael Thomas.
Okay, easy.
Yo, shut up about your fantasy doctors. All right, like straight up, you of all people have no right to be tweeting that, Michael Thomas. All right, like. No, the player in the NFL with the least amount of credibility to be telling people, oh, go hit up your fantasy doctors. Dude, he hasn't scored a touchdown since 2019. Shut up, Michael Thomas. The end.
That's funny. All right. Can Trubisky and a 23 second get me a 24 first 12 team SF start 10 PPR? Maybe. I mean, if you're moving to the Pickett owner, maybe. I
don't want to trade Trubisky in a 23 second to get a 24 first.
I don't like that. I don't like that.
I don't want to do that.
I mean,
you're losing a quarterback. You're losing a quarterback, and you're losing a second round pick, and you don't get anything for 2 years for it.
Yeah, right.
I don't want that.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. Yeah, I mean, I think we've hit kind of the bottom of the question map here.
We sure did get to quite a bit.
Yeah, we did. We definitely did. Gator, Zach, how do you really feel about MT? I think he laid it out pretty clear. Yeah,
I think he is, man.
Yeah, well, he thinks he's Michael Thomas, the guy making millions upon millions of dollars every single year.
Yeah, the guy who gets surgery right before the season starts instead of the off season. Okay, go question your doctor, bro. Go question your doctor. You had the whole entire off season to get a surgery, and you wait right until before. Okay, all right, bro. Like, come at me with my doctors, man.
Outlook on Ramondre Stevenson.
Hoopa!
I mean, I think better now than ever. I was kind of low on him coming into the offseason, but he's running with the ones. That can't be a bad thing. I don't think there's a world where that's a bad situation. So I'm fine with him. What do you think on Ramondre?
Well, we stated earlier I'm out on Patriots running backs, and here's why. Ramondre can have a very wonderful season. He could also wake up late for practice and you'll never hear from him again. You'll never hear from Ramondre Stevenson again. Do you remember Jonas Gray?
Yeah.
Yeah. That dude woke up for practice late one time after his 4-touchdown game, and you never heard from him again. I don't want any part of that. I don't want any part of a Patriots running back as long as Bill Belichick is there. All right? Have Anthony make a nice little graphic with that there. I don't want any Patriot running back in Dynasty football until Bill Belichick is gone.
I'm hiding. So I assume you trade Godwin and Gibson for Jonathan Taylor. Definitely would. But I traded Godwin and Gibson and combined what I got and my original 23 first to get Jonathan Taylor. So that was 323 first. Now I'm projected 14-0. So I'm guessing, we trade 3 first to get Jonathan Taylor? Is the question here? Am I reading that right?
I guess it's a lot to filter through here.
Yeah, I think I don't hate that. I mean, if it puts you in a real position to win and you're projected 14-0, which a lot can change that.
But. Read this whole thing without the first line. I traded Godwin and Gibson and combined what I got. What did you get?
Right.
Like what? Yeah. I see what he's doing. It's like essentially I traded Godwin, Gibson, and my original 23 first to get JT.
Oh, sure. Okay.
I
don't hate it. I mean, if you're I like moving off Gibson. We are both out on Gibson. So I like that. I like Godwin, but he's still probably going to be not much for you to start the season. He should be back week 1. There people are saying, or they're saying in camp, whatever. But it's just one of those things where I don't know. I think that I don't hate the value there, especially if that 23 first is late and you're projected to be 14-0. Yeah, I think that's a pretty solid trade to get JT. Let's get another one here. Thanks for the audit again, Don Juan. What's up, dude? I traded Javonte Williams for Damian Harris into 23 first and second. I think you could have gotten a little more. Damian Harris is just kind of one of those toxic running backs right now. Now especially running with the 2s instead of 1s. But I mean, the 23 first and second is pretty nice, especially if it ends up being relatively early. But I think you could have gotten a little more. Just something to think about for the future.
I'd be trying to move Damian Harris now.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
And I would say I traded Javonte. Yeah, I traded Javonte for a 23 first, a second, and whatever else I got.
Whatever you get from liquidating.
Yeah. And get a young player back if you can.
Yep. Would you trade Zach Wilson, Justin Jefferson, and a 24 first for Mahomes and Terry McLaurin in a Superflex Start 10 league? I don't think I would. I mean, you're kind of flipping.
Ooh, that is tough.
Yeah, I don't think I would. I obviously Wilson to Mahomes is an upgrade. JJ to Terry is a downgrade. Then you get the first, or you send the first on top. Nah, I'm gonna go ahead and stick with what I got. I try to make the move of moving Wilson, try to pivot, get from Wilson to Mahomes some other way without including Justin Jefferson. If you want to throw in that 24 first in that mix to start that deal, obviously you probably lose Terry in that, but I don't want to do this deal. I'm not a fan of this move personally.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Obviously I know the value of Mahomes. I'm not sure what kind of season he has this year without Tyreek Hill. And we're talking Justin Jefferson. That's a top 3 wide receiver, top 10 wide receiver for the next 10 years. I don't love it. And it's mostly because of Justin Jefferson. Like the first round pick, fine. Zach Wilson, fine. But those wide receivers that are like plug, you never have to worry about. That's tough.
Yeah, 100%. I agree there. I don't want to move JJ, one of my favorite players in the league, one of my favorite dynasty assets, but I think we put in a good bit of time here today, Zach. This was fun, helping everybody out with their questions, diving into some deep strategies and things like that. Got into some, mistakes to avoid in dynasty. Got into some startup draft philosophy. So we are going to get to closing it out here, Zach. This was a pleasure. What are some reasonably priced flex options to win now? 2 to 3 year window. I'm going to go Chase Edmonds, AJ Dillon. I think both of those are pretty reasonably priced.
I probably 2 months ago I would have said Cordero Patterson. but Sleeper
Nope.
took away the fact that he can start at wide receiver.
Sure.
Yeah, I think you AJ Dillon I really like. I want to throw out a name. I know you're trying to close up here, but I want to throw out a name,
That's
and
fine.
I want to know how you feel because I think this guy's available on a lot of waiver wires. Curtis Samuel. Where do
Ugh.
you land on
But
him?
but
Okay.
gross.
All right.
He's one of those guys that for years was hyped up to be this great wide receiver 2,
Mhm.
wide receiver 1 upside guy. The dude falls and scrapes his knee and he's out for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
It's just I just can't. For how cheap he is, if you want to buy in now, since he is, I have seen him on waiver wires. If you want to buy in now, fine. It will not be me. I will not be playing that game.
It's
With
worth a
Curtis Samuel.
stash, I would say.
Absolutely. If
Yeah.
you want to play that game, fine. If it costs you 0 fab to pick him up, absolutely, you go do that. But Zach, this was a blast. I'm going to close it out here. This was a great time. If you want more advice anytime, 24/7, feel free to check out Patreon, patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Support this team, go deeper with us. Discord access, a bunch of other, written content, bonus podcasts, rankings, all sorts of goodies. Link will be in the description on the channel. Type it into your Google search, wherever you got to go. Appreciate y'all for hanging out with us. Good stuff. Look forward to more of these Q&As. Everyone hit that like. Absolutely do so. Real quick, we'll close with thoughts on the Julio signing. I think it's a nothing burger. I think he ends up watching more games than he plays.
It's annoying for Russell Gage.
Yes,
It's
agreed.
annoying for Russell
100%.
Gage.
Yeah, I agree. But that's going to be it for us. Anything to say to close out, Zach, on your end?
No, but I just want to let people know. I think that we're going to be doing more of this, right, Bob?
Yes.
We have a lot of
We are
these
aiming
on
to
the
do one a
calendar.
month. We are aiming to do one a month.
Yeah.
So, yep.
I know it's been a slow summer, but I think we're getting back into the swing of things, and we'll be doing. I signed up for almost all of them, so
this will be a blast. This is fun.
Should be fun.
This is a good time. But hey, this is a great time. I woof you all. Have a great rest of your weekend. This was fun hanging out with y'all. Appreciate y'all. We will catch y'all in the next one. Have a good one.